Tonight, we will embark upon a quiet journey through the life of a figure whose influence resonated deeply within the fabric of American music and beyond, Johnny Cash. His story is one that spans decades, marked by both profound simplicity and complex depths, a narrative woven with threads of hardship, faith, redemption, and an unwavering commitment to his unique artistic vision. As the world around him shifted and evolved, Johnny Cash remained a constant, a voice that spoke to the experiences of many, often those overlooked or misunderstood. We will not rush through the remarkable arc of his existence. Instead, we will allow the narrative to unfold gently, like the slow turning of pages in a cherished old book. There will be no urgency, no dramatic flourishes, only a steady progression through the milestones and moments that shape the man known as the Man in Black. Our aim is to observe, to understand, and to appreciate the quiet power of his presence, a presence that continues to echo through time. Consider the enduring image of Johnny Cash, his deep, resonant voice, the rhythmic strum of his guitar, the stark simplicity of his attire. These elements combined to create an artistry that felt authentic, immediate, and profoundly human. His music was often described as country, yet it transcended genre, touching upon themes universal to the human condition: love, loss, struggle, hope, and the search for meaning. As we delve into the chronology of his life, from his humble beginnings in rural Arkansas to his global renown, we will trace the evolution of an artist who, despite immense fame, he never truly strayed from his roots. His impact was not merely musical, it was cultural, spiritual, and deeply personal for countless listeners. This evening, let us settle into the calm rhythm of his story, allowing the gentle current of history to carry us through the expansive landscape of Johnny Cash's world. This is an invitation to simply listen, to absorb, and perhaps to find a tranquil repose in the quiet unfolding of a legendary life. Even before the widespread recognition, before the bright lights and the fervent crowds, there was the voice. It was a voice unlike any other, possessing a singular quality that seemed to emerge from the very depths of the American landscape itself. Deep and resonant, it carried the weight of experience, an inherent solemnity that was both comforting and profoundly moving. This was not a voice cultivated for mere entertainment. It was a conduit, a vessel through which stories, emotions, and unspoken truths could flow. Imagine a stillness in the air, broken only by the low rumble of that voice. It did not need to shout to command attention. Its power lay in its quiet authority, a steady, almost elemental force. There was a gravitas to every syllable, an unhurried delivery that invited listeners to lean in, to truly hear what was being conveyed. It was a voice that seemed to have lived many lives, carrying within its timbre the echoes of forgotten paths and untold hardships. This unique vocal quality was not merely a matter of pitch or tone. It was imbued with an authenticity that resonated deeply within the human spirit. It could convey sorrow without despair, hope without naivety, and a quiet determination that spoke of enduring through adversity. When Johnny Cash sang, he did not simply perform words, he inhabited them, breathing life into characters and narratives that felt intimately familiar, even to those who'd never walked in their shoes. This resonance became a shared experience, a connection forged between the singer and his audience. His voice offered a sense of recognition, an affirmation for those who felt unseen or unheard. It spoke of common struggles, of the dignity found in labour, and the quiet resilience of the human heart. Even in its earliest manifestations, before the full extent of his artistry was widely understood, the sheer force and distinctive character of his voice were undeniable. It was a voice destined to tell stories, to bear witness, and to leave an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. a steady, unwavering presence in an often tumultuous world. Its very sound was an invitation to reflection, a quiet assurance of shared understanding. The earliest chapters of Johnny Cash's life unfolded in a place deeply etched into the landscape of American history, Dyess, Arkansas. This was not a place of established wealth or long-standing tradition, but rather a nascent community, born of desperation and an ambitious vision during the Great Depression. Dyess was a New Deal agricultural resettlement colony, a planned experiment in collective farming designed to offer a fresh start to impoverished families, many of whom had lost everything in the economic collapse or the environmental devastation of the Dust Bowl. The flat, fertile delta land of northeast Arkansas became the backdrop for these formative years. Families arrived with little more than hope, assigned small plots of land and modest identical houses built by the government. The intention was to foster self-sufficiency through cooperative farming, where families worked their own acreage but also contributed to communal endeavours, sharing resources and labour. It was a place where individual struggle met collective aspiration, a microcosm of a nation grappling with immense hardship. Life in Dyess was defined by the land and the demanding rhythms of agriculture. The rich soil promised bounty, but extracting it required ceaseless effort under the relentless sun. Cotton was the primary crop, its cultivation demanding long hours of planting, tending and picking, often by hand. For young J.R. Cash, as he was known then, and his family, these fields were the classroom of his youth, teaching lessons of physical labour, patience, and the unpredictable whims of nature. Hardship was a constant companion. The threat of crop failure, the struggle for meagre profits, and the ever-present demands of farm life shaped every day. Yet, within this quiet struggle, there was also a profound sense of community. Neighbours relied on neighbours, sharing tools, expertise, and comfort in times of need. It was a world where resilience was not an option but a necessity, where the quiet determination to simply endure and perhaps even thrive permeated the very air. This early environment, marked by both scarcity and a sturdy communal spirit, laid an enduring foundation for the man Johnny Cash would become, instilling a deep understanding of humble beginnings and the quiet strength found in perseverance. At the heart of young J.R. Cash's world in Dyess were his parents, Ray and Carrie Cash, whose contrasting yet complementary personalities shaped the atmosphere of their modest home and profoundly influenced their children. Their individual struggles and strengths would cast long shadows and bright lights upon Johnny's own developing character. Carrie Clovery Cash, Johnny's mother, was a woman of quiet, unwavering faith and immense inner strength. Her presence in the home was a steadying force, a source of comfort and spiritual grounding. She instilled in her children, particularly J.R., a deep appreciation for gospel music, hymns, and the stories of the Bible. Carrie's faith was not ostentatious, but rather a deeply held conviction that provided solace amidst the daily hardships of farm life. She often sang hymns while working, and her gentle voice filled the small house, imbuing Johnny with an early, resonant connection to music and its power to uplift and console. Her resilience, her quiet determination, and her profound sense of moral rectitude served as a foundational template for her son's later life, even as he navigated paths that sometimes diverged from her strict upbringing. Roy Cash, Johnny's father, presented a more complex figure. He was a hard-working man, fiercely independent, but also prone to moments of frustration and a stern demeanour shaped by the relentless demands of survival. Ray worked tirelessly in the fields, striving to provide for his growing family, yet the economic realities of the time often made it an uphill battle. His experiences with poverty and the challenges of the land forged a tough, sometimes gruff exterior. While he laboured with his hands, his spirit sometimes wrestled with the burdens of responsibility. The relationship between father and son could be complicated, marked by both respect and a certain distance. Yet Ray's stoicism and his unrelenting work ethic undoubtedly left an impression on Johnny, demonstrating the necessity of persistence in the face of adversity. Together, Ray and Carrie Cash represented the twin pillars of Johnny's early world. The practical, often harsh realities of physical labour and economic struggle, balanced by the enduring comfort of faith and a mother's gentle love. These interwoven influences, the quiet strength of Carrie's spiritual guidance and the rugged determination and occasional struggles of Ray, laid the groundwork for the complex, multifaceted personality that would one day become the Man in Black. They instilled values of hard work, integrity, and a deep-seated connection to the land and to a higher power, all of which would echo throughout Johnny's long and impactful life. Within the humble confines of the Cash family home in Dias, amidst the struggles of the Great Depression and the demanding rhythms of farm life, music was not merely entertainment, it was a constant, vital presence, a source of solace, spiritual nourishment, and profound expression. The very air seemed to hum with the echoes of melodies, shaping young JR's developing consciousness in subtle yet powerful ways. The most pervasive and deeply ingrained musical influence came from his mother, Carrie Cash. Her unwavering faith found its most resonant expression in gospel hymns. Carrie would often sing as she went about her daily chores, her voice a gentle melodic current flowing through the house. These sacred songs, with their narratives of struggle, redemption, and divine comfort, became the earliest soundtracks of Johnny's life. He absorbed the melodies, the harmonies, and the profound lyrical content of these spirituals, internalizing their structures and their emotional weight. This early immersion in gospel music instilled in him a foundational understanding of storytelling through song, a direct link between hardship and hope, and an appreciation for the power of a simple, heartfelt tune to convey deep truths. Beyond the hymns sung by his mother, the family also gathered around their battery-powered radio, a cherished possession that served as a window to the wider world of sound. From its glowing dial, the airwaves brought forth a diverse tapestry of musical genres. J.R. and his siblings would listen intently to the Grand Ole Opry, a weekly broadcast that introduced them to the burgeoning sounds of country music with its tales of love, loss, and life in rural America. They heard the raw, authentic voices of early country pioneers, their songs mirroring many of the experiences of the Dias community. The radio also offered glimpses of blues, folk, and even rudimentary pop music, broadening Johnny's auditory palette and exposing him to different stylistic approaches to melody and rhythm. The sounds of everyday life in Dias also contributed to this early musical landscape. The rhythmic creak of the porch swing, the distant whistle of a train passing through the flatlands, the chirping of crickets on a warm summer night, the thud of an axe chopping wood. These ambient noises formed a natural percussion section, a subtle, ever-present score to his childhood. These were the organic sounds of a life lived close to the earth, sounds that would later find their way, consciously or unconsciously, into the textures and narratives of his own compositions. In a challenging environment where material comforts were scarce, music offered a rich internal world. It was a shared experience that bonded the family, a means of processing emotions and a powerful vehicle for hope. For Johnny Cash, these childhood sounds were far more than mere background noise. They were the essential building blocks of his musical soul, laying the groundwork for the distinctive artistry that would emerge in later years. In the spring of 1944, a profound and shattering event irrevocably altered the course of young J.R. Cash's life. casting a long shadow that would stretch across his entire existence. This was the accidental death of his older brother Jack. Jack Cash, just 13 years old, was a figure of significant influence and admiration for J.R. He was described as possessing a gentle spirit, a deep understanding of scripture, and a promising future that seemed destined for ministry. The bond between the brothers was exceptionally strong, built upon shared chores, youthful dreams, and the quiet camaraderie of siblings growing up in challenging times. The tragedy occurred on May 12th, a day that began like many others in Dias. Jack was working at a local sawmill, a common practice for young boys in the community who sought to earn extra money for their families. While operating a whirling table saw, a piece of lumber reportedly kicked back, striking him with immense force and inflicting a grievous injury. He was rushed home, where he lingered for over a week, enduring immense suffering. J.R., only 12 years old at the time, was present during these agonizing days, witnessing his brother's pain and the family's desperate vigil. The helplessness of the situation, the slow, inevitable decline of someone so vital, left an indelible mark on his young psyche. Jack's passing was a devastating blow to the entire Cash family. For J.R., it was a foundational trauma, a stark confrontation with mortality and the arbitrary cruelty of fate. He often recounted vivid memories of Jack's final days, including a premonition Jack reportedly had about his own death. This spiritual dimension, coupled with the raw grief, deepened J.R.'s already developing sense of faith and his questioning of life's deeper meanings. The loss of Jack did more than simply create a void. It shaped J.R.'s worldview in fundamental ways. It instilled in him a profound empathy for suffering, a heightened awareness of life's fragility, and perhaps a sense of urgency to live fully and purposefully. He carried the weight of this loss throughout his life, often speaking of Jack and the impact he had. The memory of his brother became a constant, quiet companion, influencing his songwriting, his spiritual journey, and his understanding of both joy and sorrow. The shadow of that sawmill accident and the subsequent days of silent agony became an intrinsic part of the man Johnny Cash would become, a permanent reminder of the transient nature of existence and the enduring power of love and loss. In the aftermath of Jack's death, the young J.R. Cash sought solace and meaning through two intertwined avenues that would define much of his future life: his burgeoning faith and an ever-deepening connection to music. The profound grief he experienced, coupled with the existential questions it raised, drew him further into the spiritual teachings he had learned from his mother, Carrie. The hymns and gospel songs that had always filled their home now resonated with a new, somber significance. They offered not just comfort, but a framework for understanding loss and the promise of something beyond earthly suffering. His mother's unwavering belief in God and the afterlife became a guiding light during this period of immense darkness. J.R. found himself contemplating the nature of heaven, the meaning of sacrifice, and the solace that could be found in Scripture. This period cemented a spiritual foundation that, despite later personal struggles and periods of doubt, would remain a constant undercurrent throughout his life. Faith became a primary lens through which he processed the world, a wellspring of hope and a source of moral grounding. Concurrently, his music transitioned from a cherished pastime to an essential outlet for his complex emotions. The guitar, which he'd begun to learn, offered a means of expression that words alone could not always capture. In the quiet solitude of his room, or amidst the fields of Dias, J.R. would strum chords and hum melodies, often drawing from the gospel songs he knew, but also beginning to craft his own simple tunes. These musical explorations were not merely entertainment, they were a form of self-communion, a way to channel his sorrow, his contemplation, and his burgeoning understanding of the human condition. The rhythms and harmonies provided a meditative space, a gentle distraction from the raw ache of loss, and a path towards processing his internal landscape. This period of intense introspection following Jack's death solidified a characteristic quiet solitude in JR's personality. He became more reflective, more observant, often retreating into his own thoughts. This quietude was not born of shyness, but rather a deep engagement with his inner world, a necessary process of assimilation and understanding. The pain of loss, channeled through the twin conduits of faith and song, began to forge the distinctive emotional depth and contemplative spirit that would later permeate his artistry, distinguishing him as a voice capable of articulating both profound sorrow and enduring hope. This quiet processing laid the groundwork for the empathetic and reflective artist he was destined to become. The landscape of J.R. Cash's adolescence was deeply etched with the demanding work of the cotton fields. From a young age he joined his family in the arduous labour, toiling under the Arkansas sun, his hands growing accustomed to the rough texture of the bolls and the repetitive motion of picking. This was not merely a chore but a way of life, an inescapable rhythm of survival for countless families in the Delta. The heat, the dust, the aching muscles at the end of a long day. These were the tangible realities that shaped his understanding of work and the daily grind faced by ordinary people. These experiences in the fields instilled in him a profound empathy for the working man and woman, for those whose lives were defined by physical labour and often meagre rewards. The themes of struggle, perseverance, and the dignity of hard work would later become central pillars in his songwriting. He witnessed firsthand the quiet resilience of his neighbours and family, the way they faced adversity with a stoic determination. This intimate knowledge of rural poverty and the human spirit's capacity to endure became an authentic wellspring for his artistic expression. His music would not just speak about these experiences, it would embody them, giving voice to the unspoken narratives of the common man. Even amidst the demanding farm work, the world beyond Dias found its way into their home through the omnipresent radio. This simple device was a window to a broader cultural landscape, bringing a diverse array of sounds into their modest living room. J.R. absorbed the rich tapestry of American music, the soulful lament of the blues, the spirited narratives of country music, the uplifting harmonies of gospel, and even the popular tunes of the day. The radio was a constant companion, offering a reprieve from the daily toil and expanding his musical vocabulary far beyond the hymns his mother sang. These early exposures were not merely passive listening. J.R. possessed an innate curiosity for sound and structure, intuitively discerning the emotional weight of different melodies and lyrical styles. The raw authenticity of the blues, the storytelling tradition of country, and the spiritual conviction of gospel all contributed to his developing musical sensibility. He began to understand how different genres could evoke distinct feelings and speak to various facets of the human experience. The demanding labour of the cotton fields provided the thematic depth, while the diverse sounds from the radio provided the melodic and stylistic breadth, and together forming the foundational elements of the unique musical language he would eventually create. As the years unfolded in Dias, a quiet stirring began within J.R. Cash. The familiar rhythms of farm life, while deeply embedded in his being, gradually gave way to a gentle restlessness. The cotton fields, once the entire world, now felt like a contained space, and a silent yearning for something beyond its borders began to take root. This was not a sudden rejection of his upbringing, but rather a natural progression, an intuitive pull towards an unseen horizon, The ambition that simmered within him was largely unspoken, perhaps even to himself. It manifested not as a grand declaration, but as an internal compass pointing subtly towards new experiences, new sounds, and new possibilities. The lessons learned in the fields, the solace found in music, and the profound impact of family and faith had all prepared him, in their own way, for a departure. Dias had provided a solid foundation, a deep well of human experience to draw upon, but the time for remaining purely within its confines was slowly drawing to a close. This decision to leave was a common trajectory for many young people in rural America during that era. The promise of a different life, away from the demanding agricultural cycle, beckoned with a quiet insistence. For J.R., it was a step into the unknown, driven by a desire to explore the world beyond the familiar landscapes of his youth. The specific path was not yet clear, but the impetus to move forward, to seek out new perspectives, had become undeniable. The world outside Dias offered a different kind of education, a broader canvas upon which to paint the experiences that had shaped him. While he carried the essence of his home with him, the act of leaving itself was a formative experience. It represented a quiet courage, a willingness to step away from the secure and the known towards the uncertain yet potentially transformative. This gentle restlessness was not born of dissatisfaction, but rather a burgeoning sense of self and purpose that sought a wider arena for expression. His departure from Dias was not an abrupt severing, but a gradual unfolding, a quiet turning of a page. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, where the influences of his youth would be tested, refined, and ultimately transformed into the distinctive voice that would one day resonate with millions. The quiet boy from the cotton fields was beginning his journey into a larger world, carrying with him the indelible marks of his origins and a nascent, yet powerful artistic vision. In the summer of 1950, the quiet ambition that had stirred within J.R. Cash found a new outlet. He made the decision to enlist in the United States Air Force. This was a significant departure from the agrarian life he had known, a deliberate step into a world defined by order, precision, and an entirely different set of expectations. The structured environment of military service offered a stark contrast to the rhythms of the cotton fields, introducing a rigorous discipline that would subtly reshape his outlook. His enlistment took him far from the familiar landscapes of Arkansas, first to basic training in Texas, then to technical school in Mississippi, and eventually across the ocean to Landsberg, West Germany. This geographical shift was accompanied by a profound disciplinary one. The loose, self-directed daily routines of farm life were replaced by strict schedules, uniforms, and a clear chain of command. This enforced structure, while initially perhaps a challenge, gradually fostered a new sense of responsibility and self-control. Within this organized framework, J.R. Cash served as a Morse code intercept operator, listening to Soviet Army transmissions. This role demanded intense focus, patience, and an acute ear for detail. It was a solitary task, often performed in quiet contemplation, allowing for periods of introspection amidst the military's external demands. The vastness of the world, previously experienced through radio waves in Dias, now manifested as a tangible reality, with foreign languages and distant political tensions becoming part of his daily awareness. The Air Force exposed him to a much wider array of people and perspectives than he had ever encountered. Fellow servicemen hailed from diverse backgrounds across America, each bringing their own stories and cultural nuances. This exposure broadened his understanding of the nation itself, providing a rich tapestry of human experience that would later inform his songwriting. He witnessed different ways of life, absorbed new ideas, and began to see the world not just through the lens of rural Arkansas, but through a more expansive global perspective. A quiet transformation occurred within him during these years. The discipline of military life, the exposure to varied cultures, and the solitary nature of his work all contributed to a deepening of his character. He learned to navigate new environments, to adapt to change, and to find his place within a larger, more complex system. While the outward signs of this transformation might have been subtle, the internal shifts were profound. The young man who left Dias was steadily evolving, gaining new skills, new insights, and a quiet confidence that would prove invaluable in the years to come. The Air Force, in its own structured way, became another crucible, preparing him for the unpredictable path that lay ahead. Stationed in Landsberg, West Germany, the young J.R. Cash found himself in an environment that, while structured by military duty, also presented quiet opportunities for personal pursuits. The long stretches between shifts and the camaraderie among servicemen created space for hobbies and shared interests. It was within this context that his innate draw to music began to blossom more fully, moving beyond passive listening to active creation. This period marked a significant personal milestone, the purchase of his very first guitar. It was a simple instrument, acquired for a modest sum from a German shop, but its acquisition represented a tangible commitment to the musical inclination that had long simmered within him. With this guitar in hand, the private act of listening to music transitioned into the deliberate practice of playing it. He spent countless hours alone, slowly learning chords, experimenting with melodies, and attempting to replicate the sounds he admired. This was a patient, self-taught process, and driven by an internal desire to translate the music in his mind into a tangible form. The sounds that had filled his childhood home and the airwaves of Dias now became the foundation for his own explorations. He gravitated towards the folk songs, the country ballads, and the gospel hymns that resonated deeply with his experiences. His voice, still developing its characteristic timbre, began to find its natural register as he sang along to the melodies he learned. This was not a hurried pursuit of fame, but a methodical, almost meditative engagement with the craft of music making. It was during these years that J.R. Cash also took his first steps into collaborative music. He formed a small group with fellow airmen, a casual ensemble they somewhat playfully named the Landsberg Barbarians. This band, rudimentary in its formation, provided him with his initial experiences performing for an audience, however small or informal. They played at local service clubs and impromptu gatherings, sharing their interpretations of popular tunes and perhaps a few early original compositions. These performances, though modest, were crucial. They allowed him to test his voice, to synchronize with other musicians, and to understand the subtle dynamics of engaging an audience. The feedback, the shared laughter, and the simple act of creating music together in a foreign land solidified his passion. The Landsberg Barbarians were not a stepping stone to stardom in any immediate sense, but rather a nurturing ground where the seeds of his future artistry were quietly tended. His time in Germany therefore transcended mere military service. It became a period of crucial musical exploration and foundational development. The discipline of the Air Force provided a backdrop of stability, allowing his creative impulses to find a calm and steady outlet. The guitar became a constant companion, and the informal band provided a gentle introduction to performance. It was a time of slow, deliberate growth, where the future man in black was quietly, almost imperceptibly, honing the skills and finding the voice that would one day captivate millions. The formation of the Landsberg Barbarians led naturally to their first public, albeit informal, performances. These early engagements primarily took place within the confines of the non-commissioned officers' NCO clubs on the military base. These were familiar, comfortable settings, far removed from the pressures of professional stages. The atmosphere was convivial, filled with a gentle hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the shared sense of camaraderie among servicemen and their families. In these NCO clubs, J.R. Cash and his bandmates found a low-stakes environment, a quiet sanctuary where they could truly begin to explore their musical inclinations without the weight of expectation. There was no intense scrutiny, no critics to appease, merely an appreciative audience of peers looking for entertainment and a momentary distraction from their duties. This setting was invaluable for a burgeoning artist. It allowed for a relaxed experimentation with his vocal delivery. He could try different inflections, adjust his phrasing, and begin to understand how his voice resonated with various types of songs. The repertoire of the Landsberg Barbarians was a blend of familiar tunes, country standards, folk songs, and perhaps some early rock and roll numbers that were beginning to gain traction. But it was also in these quiet club settings that J.R. Cash began to tentatively introduce his own original material. These early songwriting efforts were raw, unpolished reflections of his experiences and observations. He would present them to his bandmates, refine them slightly, and then offer them to the NCO club audience. There was a quiet courage in these initial presentations of his own songs. To share a piece of oneself, a melody born from personal reflection, requires a certain vulnerability. Yet, in this supportive environment, that vulnerability was met with the gentle affirmation of applause and the genuine interest of listeners. These performances were not about achieving widespread recognition. They were about the internal process of artistic discovery. Each strum of the guitar, each sung lyric, was a step further into understanding his own musical identity. The NCO clubs provided a natural training ground, a place where the foundational elements of his future stage presence began to form. He learned to project his voice, to connect with the rhythm, and to subtly engage with those listening. These were not grand, dramatic performances, but rather understated, sincere offerings of music. They were moments of quiet growth, where the unique voice and storytelling ability that would later define Johnny Cash were slowly, patiently nurtured. The sounds drifting from those NCO clubs in Germany were the first faint echoes of a legend in the making, heard by a select few, but laying the groundwork for a sound that would one day echo around the world. Amidst the routines of Air Force life in West Germany and the gentle strumming within NCO clubs, a profound moment of inspiration quietly arrived for J.R. Cash. It was during this period that he encountered a documentary film titled Inside the Walls of Folsom Prison. The program offered a stark, unvarnished glimpse into the realities of incarceration, depicting the daily lives, the confinement, and the underlying despair that permeated such an institution. The visual and narrative impact of this documentary resonated deeply within him. It was not a sensationalized portrayal, but rather a direct and observational account that stirred his nascent songwriting sensibilities. The images of men behind bars, their freedom stripped away, their futures uncertain, sparked a vivid empathy. He began to imagine the thoughts and feelings of an inmate, the profound regret, the longing for escape, the harsh rhythm of a life confined. This quiet observation laid the groundwork for what would become one of his most iconic songs, Folsom Prison Blues. The initial conception was not a sudden burst of complete lyrics and melody, but rather a slow, contemplative process. The idea began to ferment in his mind, a seed planted by the documentary, nourished by his own capacity for empathy and his developing understanding of human suffering. The early stages of Folsom Prison Blues were characterized by a rough, unpolished development. He would often work on the song in solitude, perhaps late at night after his duties, or during quiet moments of reflection. His guitar, the one he had purchased in Germany, became his confidant. He would pluck out simple chords, searching for a melody that captured the somber, relentless mood of the prison experience. The lyrics began to form line by line, drawing from the imagery of the documentary and from a fertile imagination that could project itself into the shoes of another. It was during these Air Force years that the distinctive opening line, "I hear the train a comin', it's rollin' round the bend," began to take shape. This imagery, connecting the distant sound of a train, a symbol of freedom and movement, with the fixed, unmoving reality of a prison cell, created a powerful contrast. The train became a poignant reminder of what was lost, a constant, taunting presence just beyond the walls. This early version of Folsom Prison Blues was a testament to his burgeoning talent and his instinct for narrative. It was a song born not from personal experience of incarceration, but from a profound imaginative leap, fueled by a documentary and refined through countless hours of quiet, solitary practice. It was a raw, authentic expression, predating his fame, a clear indication of the thematic depth and lyrical strength that would come to define his musical legacy. This song, conceived far from American soil, would eventually become a cornerstone of his artistry, forever linked to his image and voice. Before his departure for military service, and amidst the familiar landscapes of his youth, J.R. Cash encountered Vivian Liberto. She was a quiet, observant young woman, possessing a gentle demeanour that drew his attention. Their initial meetings were simple, unburdened by grand expectations, unfolding within the ordinary rhythms of a small town. These were the early days of a burgeoning affection, a connection formed through shared moments and a growing mutual understanding. Their courtship was characterized by a quiet intensity, a developing bond that promised something enduring. As his deployment approached, the prospect of an ocean separating them loomed large. Yet this geographical distance did not diminish their connection. Instead, it seemed to solidify it. They committed to a long-distance relationship, a common challenge for young couples during wartime, relying heavily on the written word to bridge the miles. Letters became the primary conduit for their communication, flowing steadily across the Atlantic. These missives were more than mere updates on daily life. They were intimate exchanges of thoughts, dreams, and profound feelings. J.R. Cash, in particular, poured his heart into these letters, sharing his experiences in Germany, his musical aspirations, and his deepest emotions. Vivian's responses, equally heartfelt, provided solace and reassurance, anchoring him to the life he had left behind and the future he envisioned. For J.R. Cash, Vivian represented a tangible connection to home, a steady presence in a world that was often new and disorienting. Her letters were a cherished comfort, a quiet whisper of familiarity that cut through the strangeness of a foreign land and the discipline of military life. She became an emotional anchor, a consistent source of support and affection that helped him navigate the challenges of his service. The isolation that could often accompany a soldier's life was mitigated by the knowledge that someone was waiting, someone was thinking of him, and someone understood the quiet yearning he carried. Their relationship, sustained by this diligent correspondence, grew deeper and more resilient. The distance, rather than eroding their bond, seemed to strengthen its foundation, building a quiet anticipation for his return. Vivian Liberto, through her steadfastness and her unwavering presence in his thoughts and his mail, became an integral part of his identity during these formative years. She was the recipient of his earliest confidences, a witness to his developing dreams, and a silent partner in the journey he was undertaking both personally and artistically. This quiet love, nurtured across continents, would await his return, just ready to embark upon the next chapter of their lives together. With his military service completed, J.R. Cash returned to American soil in the summer of 1954. The transition from the structured environment of the Air Force to civilian life was a significant shift, marked by a quiet determination to pursue the life he had envisioned during his long absence. His immediate thoughts turned to Vivian Liberto, and soon after his return, they were married. This marked the beginning of a new phase, one built on the promises exchanged through countless letters. The question of where to establish their new life became a gentle consideration. While his roots were in Arkansas, the burgeoning musical landscape of Memphis, Tennessee, held a quiet allure. Memphis at that time was not yet the globally recognized musical capital it would become, but it was certainly a city where musical currents ran deep and diverse. It was a place where country, blues, gospel, and the nascent sounds of rock and roll mingled, creating a fertile ground for aspiring artists. The decision to settle in Memphis was not driven by an immediate ambition for grand musical stardom, but rather by a hopeful recognition of its potential. It was a practical choice, offering more opportunities than the rural Arkansas of his upbringing, yet still close enough to his family. The city's energy, though perhaps not overtly boisterous, was undeniably vibrant, a subtle hum of creativity that promised possibilities for a young man with a guitar and a collection of original songs. Their arrival in Memphis was not a grand entrance, but a quiet, hopeful step into a new chapter. J.R. Cash found employment in various modest jobs, including working as an appliance salesman, a common path for young men seeking to establish themselves. These were the days of quiet domesticity, of building a home with Vivian and adjusting to the rhythms of civilian life. Yet beneath the surface of these everyday routines, the musical flame that had been kindled in Germany continued to glow. Memphis, with its radio stations playing a diverse array of American music and its small recording studios, represented a quiet invitation. It was a place where a musician could find an audience, even if only in small local venues. The city did not promise instant fame, but it offered a chance, a subtle opening for a talent still in its nascent stages. For J.R. Cash, Memphis beckoned not with a roar but with a steady, encouraging whisper, yet suggesting that here, among its varied sounds and quiet opportunities, he might find his voice. Upon settling into Memphis with Vivian, the immediate reality for J.R. Cash was not the bright lights of a recording studio, but the steady demands of everyday employment. His chosen profession during this period was that of a door-to-door appliance salesman, a role that required persistence and a quiet resilience. Each morning he would set out, carrying his samples and his sales pitch from house to house, navigating the unfamiliar streets of Memphis. This was a time of quiet grind, an ordinary existence that stood in stark contrast to the burgeoning musical dreams he harboured. The days were filled with polite rejections, occasional successes, and the steady rhythm of knocking on doors, introducing himself, and attempting to persuade strangers of the merits of a new washing machine or vacuum cleaner. It was a humble occupation, one that provided a modest income for his young family, but offered little in the way of creative fulfillment. The work itself was often tedious, a repetitive cycle of presentation and negotiation. It demanded a certain detached composure, a quiet fortitude to face indifference or disinterest hour after hour. This daily routine, far removed from the stage or the recording booth, represented the practical necessities of life. It was the bedrock of responsibility upon which he was attempting to build a future, even as another, more profound calling pulled at his spirit. Evenings and weekends became precious windows of opportunity. After a day spent discussing features and prices, J.R. Cash would return to his guitar, retreating into the world of melodies and lyrics, the songs that had begun to take shape during his Air Force days, infused with the stark realities of life, and the echoes of his Arkansas upbringing continued to evolve. This quiet, internal world of creation provided a necessary refuge from the demands of his sales work, a space where his true aspirations could breathe. The contrast between these two aspects of his life was profound. By day, he was a salesman, focused on the tangible and the transactional. By night, he was a musician, delving into the intangible realm of emotion and storytelling. This period of early struggle, marked by the quiet dedication to a demanding and often unrewarding job, served as a testament to his perseverance. It quietly underscored the depth of his commitment to both his family and his artistic calling, even when the path ahead seemed uncertain and the daily work felt far removed from his deepest desires. Amidst the quiet routine of his appliance sales, J.R. Cash sought out kindred musical spirits in Memphis. He found them in Luther Perkins and Marshall Grant, two men who had become the foundational elements of his early sound. Luther Perkins, with his distinctive electric guitar style, and Marshall Grant on the upright bass, were initially mechanics. Their musical inclinations, however, led them to connect with Cash, forming a trio that would soon become known as the Tennessee Two. Their initial rehearsals took place in modest settings, often in Cash's small home, where the shared ambition to make the music began to coalesce into a unique sound. There was a quiet, unstated understanding between them, a collective desire to craft something authentic. Luther's guitar playing was characterized by its simplicity and rhythmic precision, a style that was both understated and powerfully effective. He favored clean, sharp notes, often played on the bass strings of his Telecaster, creating a driving, percussive quality that became instantly recognizable. Marshall Grant's bass work provided the deep, resonant anchor for the group. His upright bass offered a steady, unwavering pulse, a foundational rhythm that allowed Cash's voice and Luther's guitar to float above it with clarity. Together, their instrumentation was sparse, stripped down to its essential components: a single electric guitar, an upright bass, and Cash's acoustic guitar and baritone voice. This deliberate simplicity was not a limitation but a strength, fostering a clear, whole uncluttered sonic landscape. The chemistry between these three musicians was not overtly flamboyant but rather a quiet, organic development. They listened to each other, responding with subtle shifts and shared rhythms. The sound they forged was lean and direct, eschewing elaborate ornamentation in favour of a raw, honest delivery. This stripped-down approach allowed the narratives within Cash's songs to take centre stage, unburdened by excessive instrumentation. This minimalist style, later dubbed boom chicka boom for its rhythmic guitar pattern, became the signature of the Tennessee Two. It was a sound born of practicality and a shared aesthetic, a desire to cut through the noise and deliver something impactful and memorable. Their music was not about flash or virtuosity, but about groove, atmosphere, and the direct communication of a story. This quiet collaboration laid the essential groundwork for the iconic sound that would soon emerge from Memphis, a sound that was both deeply traditional and startlingly new. With their sound gradually taking shape, the trio, still known as JR and the Tennessee Two, set their sights on the most important musical destination in Memphis, Sun Records. Sam Phillips, the visionary behind Sun, had already discovered Elvis Presley and was known for his ability to unearth raw talent. For Cash and his bandmates, Sun Records represented the gateway to their musical dreams. Their initial attempts to secure an audition were met with the reality of a busy studio. Sam Phillips was a man of discerning taste and limited time, and many aspiring musicians sought his attention. The trio would make their way to the modest studio on Union Avenue, often waiting patiently, only to be turned away. This pattern of quiet persistence and polite rejection became a regular part of their routine. They were not easily deterred, driven by an inner conviction that their music held something unique. Cash, Luther and Marshall would often leave their names and contact information, hoping for a call that did not immediately come. There was no outward display of frustration, simply a quiet determination to keep trying. Their visits were marked by a humble resolve, a belief that eventually their opportunity would arrive. During this period of waiting and hoping, the band focused heavily on gospel music. Raised in a devout household, Cash had always found solace and expression in sacred songs, and many of the pieces they practiced and performed were spirituals, hymns and gospel numbers, reflecting a deep-seated part of Cash's own identity and upbringing. They believed that their gospel material, with its heartfelt messages and resonant melodies, would appeal to Phillips. After all, gospel music was a significant part of the Southern musical landscape and had influenced many of the artists Phillips had already recorded. However, when they finally secured a brief audience with Sam Phillips, their presentation of gospel songs did not immediately resonate with the producer's vision. Phillips, ever on the lookout for a new sound that could cross over into the burgeoning rock and roll market, listened politely, but did not offer a recording contract based on their spiritual repertoire. This initial setback, though perhaps disheartening, and did not extinguish their quiet fire. It served instead as a subtle redirection. Phillips, with his keen ear, offered a simple piece of advice. Return with something that felt more original, something that truly captured their own unique voice, rather than covering existing gospel standards. The door was not closed, merely re-angled, inviting them to dig deeper into their own creative wellspring. Following Sam Phillips's gentle suggestion to explore their own unique voice, J.R. Cash, Luther Perkins, and Marshall Grant returned to their modest practice space with renewed purpose. The implicit challenge from Phillips was clear: to move beyond established forms and present something distinctly their own. It was during this period of quiet reflection and persistent creation that a new song began to take shape. Born from Cash's experiences and observations, the song was Hey Porter. It was a simple, yet evocative narrative, capturing the rhythmic pulse of a train journey and the longing for home. The lyrics spoke of a traveller on a southbound train, eagerly anticipating his return to the familiar landscapes of his native South. The imagery was vivid, the sentiment universal, and the melody carried a distinctive driving energy. It possessed the sparse, direct quality that would become a hallmark of Cash's sound. When the trio eventually secured another audition with Sam Phillips, they presented Hey Porter. The moment was not one of dramatic revelation, but rather a quiet, significant shift. As Cash began to sing, accompanied by Luther's precise, understated guitar and Marshall's steady foundational bass, the atmosphere in the small Sun Records studio subtly changed. Phillips, a man with an innate understanding of commercial appeal and artistic authenticity, listened intently. The song's rhythm, the distinctive boom chicka boom that Luther and Marshall had honed, provided an irresistible forward momentum. Cash's vocal delivery, already imbued with a deep, resonant quality, brought the narrative to life with an understated power. It was raw, honest, and undeniably original. Phillips recognized it immediately. This was not a reinterpretation of a gospel standard. This was a fresh, unvarnished sound that spoke to the experiences of ordinary people. There was a quiet thrill in the air. Phillips, usually reserved, expressed his approval. He saw the potential not just in the song, but in the unique synergy of the three musicians. Or he sensed a new direction, a sound that could carve its own path in the evolving musical landscape of the mid-1950s. This was the moment of the breakthrough, the first tangible step towards a recording career. The persistent visits, the hours of practice, and the quiet determination had finally culminated in recognition. Hey Porter was not just a song. It was the key that unlocked the door to Sun Records, marking the beginning of Johnny Cash's journey as a recording artist. With Hey Porter as their initial offering, Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two officially entered the Sun Records stable. a place already vibrant with the nascent sounds of rock and roll. Yet, what Cash and his band brought to the studio was distinctly their own, a sound that defied easy categorization and carved out a unique space in the burgeoning musical landscape. This was the era where the boom-chicka-boom sound truly crystallized and began to reach wider audiences. The distinctive rhythm was not merely a stylistic choice, it was an organic development, born from the limitations and strengths of the trio. Luther Perkins' guitar playing was central to this. He rarely played lead lines or complex solos. Instead, his approach was a percussive, rhythmic strumming, often muting the strings to create a chugging, train-like effect. This steady, driving pulse, combined with Marshall Grant's foundational bass lines, provided an unwavering, almost hypnotic backdrop for Cash's deep baritone. It was simple, yet profoundly effective, creating a sense of forward motion and grounded authenticity. This boom-chicka-boom sound was a deliberate fusion of Cash's diverse musical upbringing. The storytelling elements and moral undertones often drew from country music and gospel hymns, both deeply ingrained in his consciousness from his childhood in Dias. The raw, direct emotional delivery, however, also held echoes of the blues, a genre that spoke of struggle and resilience. The minimalism of their arrangement, with its emphasis on rhythm and vocal clarity, allowed these various influences to coalesce into something fresh and compelling. At Sun Records, this unique approach stood apart. While artists like Elvis Presley were igniting stages with charismatic performances and a revolutionary blend of rhythm and blues with country, and Jerry Lee Lewis was pounding the piano with unrestrained energy, Cash offered a different kind of intensity. His music possessed a gravitas, a stark honesty that resonated deeply. There was no flashy instrumentation or overt showmanship. The power lay in the directness of the message and the unwavering rhythm that carried it. Phillips, ever the visionary, understood that Cash's sound tapped into a different vein. It was less about youthful rebellion and more about enduring narratives, tales of hardship, love, and redemption. The stark, almost sparse arrangements ensured that Cash's voice, with its deep timbre and earnest delivery, remained the focal point. This deliberate simplicity gave the music a timeless quality, ensuring that even as other trends came and went, the boom-chicka-boom sound of Johnny Cash remained distinctive and deeply affecting. It was a new sound for a new era, or a quietly powerful and profoundly influential. Following the release of Hey Porter, Johnny Cash and the Tennessee 2 quickly followed up with another single, Cry, Cry, Cry. This track, a lament of lost love and heartache, continued to build upon the foundation laid by its predecessor, further showcasing Cash's emerging lyrical prowess and the band's distinctive rhythmic drive. It was another step in solidifying their presence on the country charts, demonstrating that their unique sound was not a one-off novelty, but a consistent, appealing artistic vision. However, it was the flip side of this second single, Folsom Prison Blues, that truly began to define Johnny Cash's public persona and cement his connection with a particular segment of the American experience. Released in late 1955, the song quickly garnered attention. There were its stark narrative and evocative imagery, capturing the imagination of listeners across the nation. The song's premise, a prisoner's grim reflections on his confinement and regret, was both raw and deeply human. The lyrics of Folsom Prison Blues spoke of a man trapped behind bars, haunted by his past actions and yearning for freedom. Phrases like, I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' round the bend, immediately established a powerful sense of place and longing. The contrast between the prisoner's bleak reality and the imagined freedom of the outside world, particularly the image of the rich folks eating in a fancy dining car, resonated with a profound sense of injustice and yearning. that was widely felt, if not always openly expressed. This song established a unique narrative voice for Cash. He was not merely singing about heartbreak or simple pleasures, he was giving voice to the experience of the outsider, the person on the margins of society. While Cash himself had never been incarcerated at Folsom Prison, his ability to convey such deep empathy and understanding for the plight of the imprisoned was remarkable. It stemmed from his own experiences with hardship, his innate compassion, and perhaps even the sense of being an outsider that many felt during his formative years. Folsom Prison Blues became more than just a hit song, it marked a quiet cultural shift. It allowed a mainstream audience to glimpse into a world rarely explored in popular music with such unflinching honesty. Cash's delivery, combined with the relentless boom-chicka-boom rhythm, created an atmosphere that was both melancholic and compelling. It was a song that invited listeners to consider the darker corners of human experience, to feel a connection with those who had fallen from grace. This early success firmly positioned Johnny Cash not just as a country singer, but as a voice for the everyman, particularly those who felt forgotten or misunderstood, a role he would continue to embrace and embody throughout his long career. As Johnny Cash's music began to reach a wider audience, an observable preference in his attire started to manifest, subtly shaping his public image long before it became a deliberate statement. From his earliest performances and promotional photographs, there was a consistent tendency for him to wear dark clothing. This was not initially a calculated marketing strategy or a conscious effort to cultivate a specific brand. Rather, it emerged quite organically from his personal inclinations and practical considerations. In those early days, stage costumes for country performers often featured elaborate ornamentation, bright colours, and intricate embroidery. However, Johnny Cash gravitated towards simpler, darker garments. Black shirts, trousers, and jackets became his customary stage wear. This choice was partly pragmatic. Dark clothing was often more affordable, more readily available, and less prone to showing the wear and tear of constant touring. Yet, beyond the practical, there was an unspoken resonance between his preferred attire and the quiet intensity of his musical delivery. This nascent preference for dark clothing began to coalesce into what would eventually become the iconic Man in Black persona. It was not a sudden transformation, but a gradual, but almost imperceptible evolution. The dark attire complemented the serious, often somber themes explored in his songs. It mirrored the gravity and introspection present in his lyrics, particularly in pieces like Folsom Prison Blues, which delved into the struggles and suffering of others. The understated nature of his dark clothing stood in quiet contrast to the more flamboyant styles prevalent in country music at the time. It suggested a man less concerned with outward showmanship and more focused on the substance of his message. This visual consistency began to imbue his presence with a certain gravitas, an air of quiet authority that resonated deeply with his growing audience. This early, unforced adoption of dark attire also aligned with his inherent empathy for the downtrodden and the marginalized. The choice of black, often associated with solemnity and humility, inadvertently underscored his commitment to giving voice to those who often went unheard. It suggested a solidarity with the common man, a rejection of superficiality, and a focus on the deeper, more profound aspects of human experience. The Man in Black was not yet a fully articulated philosophy, but its visual seeds were undeniably sown in these early years, growing naturally from Johnny Cash's personal preferences and the authentic spirit of his music. With a distinctive sound and a growing catalogue of recorded material, Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two embarked upon the relentless journey of early touring life. The road in the mid-1950s was far from glamorous for nascent musicians. Travel involved long hours in automobiles, often without air conditioning, just traversing vast distances between small towns and larger cities. Performances frequently took place in humble venues, from high school gymnasiums to local auditoriums, sometimes several times a day. The challenges were numerous. There was the constant fatigue of travel, the irregular sleep patterns, and the often modest accommodations. Meals were frequently snatched on the go, and personal comforts were a rare luxury. Yet, amidst these hardships, a quiet determination propelled them forward. Each performance, no matter how small the audience, represented an opportunity to connect, to share their music, and to slowly build a following. Johnny Cash found himself moving within a burgeoning musical community, particularly among other artists signed to Sun Records. These shared experiences fostered a unique camaraderie. Musicians like Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, and Jerry Lee Lewis, though each developing their own distinct styles, often crossed paths on the touring circuit. They shared stages, stories, and the quiet exhaustion that comes from dedicating oneself entirely to the road. These were not merely professional acquaintances, they were fellow travellers in a new and exciting musical landscape. They understood the sacrifices, the unpredictable nature of the work, and the profound satisfaction of performing. There were moments of light-heartedness and shared laughter that punctuated the arduous schedules, forging bonds that would endure through the years. For Johnny Cash, this period of constant movement, while physically demanding, also fostered a growing sense of belonging. After years of feeling somewhat adrift, first in the Air Force and then finding his footing in Memphis, the road provided a new kind of home. The musical community became a surrogate family, offering support and understanding in a world that was rapidly changing around them. The quiet hum of the highway, the rhythmic thrum of the engine, and the recurring faces of fellow musicians began to define his days. This was the crucible in which his resilience was further forged, where his connection to his music deepened, and where the solitary artist began to find his place within a collective movement that would soon reshape popular culture. The touring life, with all its inherent difficulties, was a necessary and formative chapter, solidifying his path and expanding his reach, one town at a time. As the 1950s quietly progressed, Johnny Cash's relationship with Sun Records, while instrumental in launching his career, began to show the subtle signs of evolving needs. The early excitement of recording and touring had been profound, yet as his artistic vision matured, a quiet dissatisfaction regarding certain aspects of his contract began to surface. The landscape of the music industry was shifting, and artists were slowly recognizing the importance of greater agency over their creations. The primary motivations for considering a departure from Sun were twofold: a deepening desire for more creative control over his recordings, and a pragmatic need for better financial remuneration. Sam Phillips, the visionary behind Sun, had provided an invaluable platform, but his business model, while effective for breaking new talent, offered terms that became increasingly restrictive for established artists. Cash's output at Sun had been prolific, yielding hits that resonated across the nation, yet the financial returns did not always align with the scale of his success. Beyond the monetary aspects, there was an artistic longing to explore broader thematic landscapes and to experiment with different instrumentation and production techniques. Sun's signature raw, stripped-down sound had served him well, but Cash envisioned a future where his music could evolve without feeling constrained by a specific sonic template or a particular studio's limitations. He sought the freedom to delve deeper into the stories he wanted to tell, to record gospel albums, and to pursue projects that might not fit neatly into the rockabilly or country molds that Sun was predominantly known for. This was not a sudden, impulsive decision, but rather a carefully considered strategic move for long-term artistic independence. The conversations and negotiations were handled with a quiet professionalism, reflecting Cash's growing understanding of the business side of music. He was seeking not just a new label, but a partnership that would respect his artistic integrity and provide the resources necessary to realize his expanding creative ambitions. Columbia Records emerged as a compelling option. It was a larger, more established label with a broader reach and a reputation for supporting a diverse roster of artists across various genres. The prospect of working with a company that could offer more substantial advances, better royalty rates, and greater creative latitude was undeniably appealing. The opportunity to own his publishing, a crucial aspect of long-term financial security for a songwriter, also played a significant role in his considerations. The move from Sun to Columbia was ultimately a quiet declaration of artistic intent. It signalled a maturation, a step taken with foresight and a steady hand, aimed at securing the foundation for a sustainable and creatively fulfilling career. It was a transition from a nurturing but ultimately limited environment to a larger stage where his unique voice could resonate even more powerfully, guided by his own evolving vision. This strategic shift marked a pivotal moment, quietly redefining the trajectory of Johnny Cash's remarkable journey in music. The transition to Columbia Records in 1958 marked a significant yet quietly unfolding chapter in Johnny Cash's artistic journey. This move was not merely a change of label. It represented an expansion of possibilities, allowing his distinctive voice and storytelling to reach a broader and more diverse audience than ever before. The larger infrastructure of Columbia provided a different kind of support, one that encouraged a subtle, yet profound, broadening of his musical horizons. At Sun Records, Cash had established a foundational sound, a powerful blend of country, folk, and rockabilly. However, Columbia offered a wider canvas, an environment where his artistic vision could quietly unfurl and explore new textures and themes. He was no longer confined to the specific sonic imprint of a smaller independent label. This new freedom allowed him to delve more deeply into the narratives that had always compelled him. Thus, from tales of hardship and redemption to reflections on faith and social justice. One of the immediate and most notable expansions was his ability to record gospel music. His spiritual convictions had always been a deeply personal aspect of his life, and at Columbia he found the opportunity to translate these beliefs into recorded works. Albums like Hymns by Johnny Cash and Songs of Our Soil emerged from this period, showcasing a contemplative side of his artistry that resonated with many listeners and quietly demonstrated the depth of his character beyond the hit singles. The resources available at Columbia also facilitated a more sophisticated approach to production and instrumentation. While the raw energy of his Sun recordings remained a cherished part of his legacy, Columbia allowed for a gentle layering of sounds, incorporating elements that enriched his storytelling without sacrificing his authentic core. This subtle evolution helped to solidify his position as a multifaceted artist, capable of moving beyond genre boundaries. Furthermore, Columbia's extensive distribution networks and promotional capabilities ensured that his music would reach a far wider demographic. His songs began to penetrate not just the country charts, but also pop and folk markets, slowly cultivating a diverse fan base that appreciated the universal truths embedded in his narratives. This quiet expansion of his audience underscored the timeless appeal of his themes and the compelling honesty of his delivery. This period at Columbia was characterized by a steady, consistent output of material, each release contributing to the gradual broadening of his artistic identity. It was a time of thoughtful exploration, where his inherent connection to traditional American music was gently deepened and presented with a newfound maturity. The move allowed him to quietly cement his status not just as a country star, but as an influential figure whose music spoke to the human condition across various cultural landscapes. The late 1960s in America were a period of profound social and political shifts, a time when many established norms were being quietly questioned and re-evaluated. Amidst the swirling currents of the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and the counterculture, a growing awareness began to emerge regarding the conditions within the nation's correctional facilities. While not yet a mainstream movement, the seeds of prison reform were being sown, with increasing scrutiny directed towards the treatment of incarcerated individuals and the efficacy of the penal system. It was within this slowly shifting societal landscape that Johnny Cash's long-held empathy for those behind bars found its most powerful expression. His connection to the incarcerated was not a sudden development, nor was it a calculated public relations gesture. Rather, it was a deeply ingrained aspect of his character, nurtured by his own struggles, his faith, and an innate understanding of human fallibility. From his earliest days, his music had often given voice to the downtrodden, the lonely, and those on the fringes of society. The figure of the prisoner, longing for freedom and reckoning with past mistakes, resonated profoundly with him. The song Folsom Prison Blues, first recorded early in his career, was more than just a popular tune. It was a quiet declaration of solidarity, a narrative spun from the perspective of one confined. This song, with its evocative imagery of a train rolling by and the despair of confinement, had become an anthem for many prisoners, a testament to Cash's ability to articulate their silent struggles. He had performed in prisons before, small, unheralded visits that were driven by a genuine desire to connect with and offer a moment of solace to those forgotten by the outside world. These earlier experiences had quietly affirmed his belief in the redemptive power of music within such stark environments. The idea of recording a live album within a prison had simmered for many years, a persistent thought in his mind. It represented a desire to capture the raw, unfiltered interaction between his music and an audience that truly understood its weight and meaning. The late 1960s provided the opportune moment for this quiet aspiration to become a reality. The broader social context meant there was a nascent public receptivity to discussions about the lives of prisoners, even if such conversations were still largely marginalized. Folsom State Prison, a formidable institution with a long history, became the chosen location for this ambitious undertaking. It stood as a stark symbol of the very issues Cash had addressed in his songs. His decision to bring his music directly into this environment was a quiet act of defiance against societal indifference, a gentle assertion that even within the most restrictive walls, humanity and hope could still be found. The stage was thus set for an event that would not only define a significant chapter in his career, but also quietly contribute to a wider public consciousness regarding the lives of the incarcerated. On January 13th, 1968, the quiet confines of Folsom Prison were momentarily transformed by the arrival of Johnny Cash and his entourage. The atmosphere was charged with a unique blend of anticipation and apprehension. For the inmates, it was a rare break from the monotonous routine, a glimpse of the outside world brought directly to them. For Cash, it was the culmination of a long-held personal mission. As he walked onto the makeshift stage, dressed in his customary black, a ripple of recognition and subdued excitement moved through the assembled men. There was no need for elaborate introductions or forced pleasantries. The connection was almost immediate, forged not just by his fame, but by the understanding that he was there for them, not merely performing to them. His opening words, "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash," delivered with a calm, steady voice, were met with an eruption of cheers and applause, an authentic release of emotion from an audience typically constrained by severe restrictions. The performance itself was a raw and unvarnished spectacle. The acoustics were far from perfect, the setting stark and unforgiving, yet these elements only served to amplify the authenticity of the moment. Cash played with an intensity that transcended the physical space. His voice, deep and resonant, filled the hall, carrying the weight of his songs with an undeniable sincerity. He performed many of his well-known pieces, but it was Folsom Prison Blues that truly ignited the crowd. When he sang the line, "But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die," the reaction was visceral, a collective roar that spoke of shared understanding, not endorsement, but recognition of the dark human experiences his music so unflinchingly explored. The interaction between Cash and the inmates was a quiet dance of mutual respect. He spoke directly to them, not down to them, sharing brief, unadorned anecdotes and offering words of encouragement. The prisoners in turn responded with an almost desperate enthusiasm, their cheers and laughter punctuated by moments of hushed attentiveness. It was a symbiotic relationship. Their raw energy fueled his performance, and his music, in turn, offered them a temporary reprieve, a moment of dignity and recognition. This was not a polished, studio-perfect recording. It was alive, imbued with the sounds of the prison itself. The coughs, the shuffles, the occasional shout, all woven into the fabric of the music. The authenticity was palpable. Cash presented himself not as a distant celebrity, but as a fellow traveller on life's often difficult road, a man who understood struggle and redemption. This genuine connection, devoid of artifice, is what quietly elevated the Folsom Prison concert from a simple musical event to a legendary moment in American cultural history. A true act of solidarity delivered through the power of song. The release of At Folsom Prison in May of 1968 marked a pivotal moment in Johnny Cash's career and in the landscape of American music. What began as a heartfelt gesture of solidarity quickly evolved into a quiet cultural phenomenon, resonating far beyond the walls of the correctional facility where it was recorded. The album was not merely a collection of songs, it was a testament to raw emotion and an unfiltered look into a rarely acknowledged corner of society. From the outset, the critical reception was overwhelmingly positive. Reviewers praised the album's authenticity, its unvarnished sound, and Cash's powerful, empathetic delivery. They recognized the unique energy captured in the live recording, the palpable interaction between artist and audience, and the profound social commentary embedded within the music. It was hailed as a courageous and groundbreaking work, a departure from the often sanitized recordings prevalent at the time. Commercially, the album achieved immense success. It climbed steadily up the charts, reaching number 1 on the Billboard Country Albums chart and peaking within the top 15 on the all-genre pop albums chart. The single Folsom Prison Blues also experienced a remarkable resurgence, becoming a significant hit once more. This widespread appeal demonstrated that the album's message transcended traditional genre boundaries, finding an audience among both country music aficionados and a broader demographic interested in its social resonance. At Folsom Prison solidified Johnny Cash's image as the Man in Black, a figure who championed the downtrodden, the marginalized, and those living on the fringes of society. It cemented his reputation as an outlaw, not in the criminal sense, but as an artist willing to challenge conventions and speak uncomfortable truths. This persona, already established through years of consistent messaging, was now amplified and validated by the raw power of the Folsom recording. He became, for many, the authentic voice of the common man, a compassionate observer of human failings and resilience. The album quietly broadened Cash's appeal, introducing his music to a new generation of listeners who were drawn to its gritty realism and anti-establishment undertones. It resonated with the prevailing countercultural sentiments of the late 1960s Despite Cash's more traditional country roots, he was seen as genuine, a rare commodity in an increasingly commercialized music industry. At Folsom Prison became more than just a successful record. It became a defining statement, or a quiet declaration of purpose that would shape the remainder of Johnny Cash's remarkable journey. Following the unexpected and profound success of At Folsom Prison, Johnny Cash felt a clear continuation of his mission. His commitment to those incarcerated was not a fleeting impulse, but a deeply ingrained aspect of his character, rooted in his own struggles and his unwavering faith. The Folsom experience had demonstrated the tangible impact his music could have, and so, less than a year later, in February of 1969, he returned to the prison system, this time to the formidable San Quentin State Prison in California. The concert at San Quentin was more than a mere follow-up. It was a powerful reaffirmation of his quiet advocacy. It underscored his belief that those on the margins, often unseen and unheard by wider society, deserved dignity, respect, and a voice. The atmosphere at San Quentin was different from Folsom, perhaps even more charged, yet Cash approached it with the same calm conviction and genuine empathy. He understood the complex emotions simmering beneath the surface, the despair, the anger, and the flicker of hope, and he met them with his presence and his music. These prison concerts were never simply about entertainment. They were deliberate acts of connection, bridges built between worlds that rarely intersected. For the inmates, Johnny Cash represented a rare moment of being seen, of having their humanity acknowledged, if only for a few hours. His songs, often tales of hardship, redemption, and the consequences of choices, resonated deeply with their lived experiences. He sang not as an outsider looking in, but as a fellow traveller on life's often difficult road, someone who understood the weight of regret and the yearning for a second chance. The recording of Johnny Cash at San Quentin further cemented his unique artistic path. It captured another raw, unpolished performance, complete with the spontaneous reactions of the audience, including the infamous moment when Cash's direct address to the prisoners elicited a roar of approval. This album, much like its predecessor, became a commercial triumph, once again topping the country charts and achieving significant crossover success. It contained iconic tracks such as A Boy Named Sue, which became a #1 pop hit, further expanding his reach and influence. Through these seminal live recordings, Johnny Cash quietly yet powerfully advanced the conversation around prison reform. He did not preach or pontificate. Instead, he simply showed up, listened, and shared his art. His actions brought an often ignored population into the public consciousness, subtly challenging prevailing attitudes and inspiring a deeper consideration of justice and compassion. His commitment to these forgotten souls was a consistent thread throughout his public life, a quiet, unwavering testament to his core values. Beneath the public persona of the Man in Black, and even amidst the triumphs of his prison concerts, a more insidious struggle was quietly taking root within Johnny Cash. The pressures of a demanding career, the relentless touring schedule, and the constant expectation to perform began to exact a toll that extended beyond mere physical fatigue. This environment often provided a fertile ground for the subtle infiltration of substances, a common narrative among performers facing similar strains. His journey into addiction was not a sudden plunge, but a gradual, almost imperceptible slide. It began, as it often does, with seemingly innocuous remedies for the daily grind. Amphetamines, often referred to as uppers, provided the energy needed to endure long hours on the road, to push through exhaustion, and to maintain a vibrant presence on stage night after night. They offered a temporary escape from the weariness that gnawed at him, a false sense of invincibility in the face of an unrelenting schedule. Conversely, the stimulant's inevitable crash often led to sleeplessness and agitation. To counteract this, barbiturates, or downers, offered a promise of calm and much-needed rest. This created a cycle, a delicate and dangerous balance where one substance was used to mitigate the effects of the other. The initial self-medication, intended as a practical solution to the rigours of his profession, slowly transformed into a dependency, an inescapable need that began to dictate his days and nights. The onset of this addiction was often obscured by the very nature of his work. The transient life of a touring musician, the constant travel and the late nights provided a certain anonymity and an environment where such habits could develop with less immediate scrutiny. For a time, the substances might have even appeared to be functional, enabling him to meet the extraordinary demands placed upon him. However, the internal cost was immense and growing. This private battle stood in stark contrast to his public image as a morally upright figure, a voice for the downtrodden, and a man of faith. The dissonance between these two realities would become a significant source of internal conflict and personal torment. The quiet hum of dependency grew louder, an insistent presence that began to overshadow his professional achievements and personal relationships. It was a struggle that would define a considerable portion of his life, a shadow that lengthened even as his star continued its ascent. The path ahead would be marked by this profound personal challenge, a hidden dimension to the iconic figure known to the world. The quiet escalation of Johnny Cash's dependency on amphetamines and barbiturates cast a long, disquieting shadow over his domestic life, particularly within his first marriage to Vivian Liberto. While the public saw the charismatic man in black, Vivian and their daughters experienced a more turbulent and unpredictable reality behind closed doors. The initial charm and stability that had drawn Vivian to Johnny began to erode under the relentless strain of his addiction. Vivian's perspective, often recounted in her own words years later, painted a picture of quiet suffering and profound isolation. She was left to navigate the escalating chaos largely on her own, attempting to maintain a semblance of normalcy for their 4 daughters, Roseanne, Kathy, Cindy, and Tara. The constant touring meant long absences, but even when Johnny was home, his presence was often diminished or altered by the substances. His moods could swing unpredictably, yet from periods of restless energy to deep withdrawal and irritability. The home, which should have been a sanctuary, often became a place of tension and uncertainty. Children, with their innate sensitivity, absorbed the atmosphere around them. They witnessed a father who was increasingly distant, sometimes erratic, and often unavailable emotionally. The promises of a stable family life, once a cornerstone of their early years, seemed to recede into the background as the addiction tightened its grip. Vivian bore the brunt of this daily reality. She often found herself in the unenviable position of attempting to shield her daughters from the worst of their father's struggles, while simultaneously grappling with her own feelings of helplessness and heartbreak. The love she held for Johnny was undoubtedly deep, but it was tested by the repeated disappointments and the slow erosion of trust that addiction invariably brings. She faced the challenge of raising their children amidst a growing sense of instability, a stark contrast to the wholesome image often projected by country music stars of the era. The impact on his relationship with his daughters was subtle but pervasive. While they adored their father, the consistency and steadfast presence that young children crave were often compromised. Special occasions might be marred by his absence or his altered state. These experiences, though perhaps not always explicitly understood at the time, contributed to the complex dynamics within the family, leaving lasting imprints. The quiet suffering within the family unit was a private sorrow, unfolding away from the bright lights of the stage, a stark reminder of the hidden costs of his escalating personal demons. This strain would ultimately prove to be a significant factor in the unravelling of their marriage, a quiet tragedy unfolding behind the scenes of a burgeoning legend. As Johnny Cash's dependency deepened, the subtle shifts in his behaviour gradually became more pronounced, spilling from the private confines of his home into the public eye. His once meticulously maintained professional image began to show cracks, revealing the quiet desperation that accompanied his struggles. These instances of erratic behaviour, both witnessed by those closest to him and occasionally by the wider world, underscored the pervasive nature of his addiction. One of the most visible manifestations of his struggles was the increasing frequency of missed concerts and delayed performances. Fans who had eagerly awaited his arrival were sometimes left disappointed, while promoters faced the logistical and financial fallout of an artist who, at times, was simply unable to fulfill his commitments. These cancellations were often attributed to illness or exhaustion. Polite explanations offered to mask the underlying truth of his drug use. Each missed show, however, chipped away at his reliability and contributed to a growing sense of unease among those responsible for his career. Beyond the stage, Johnny Cash's behaviour occasionally led to more direct encounters with the law. There were instances of arrests, often related to public intoxication or misdemeanour drug possession. One notable incident in October 1965 involved his arrest in El Paso, Texas, after customs agents discovered amphetamines in his guitar case. Though he maintained the pills were for his own use and not for distribution, the event became a public spectacle, tarnishing his carefully cultivated image. These encounters, while relatively minor in the grand scheme of his life, were stark reminders of the precipice upon which he stood. Privately, the erratic behaviour was often more subtle but no less damaging. Those around him observed cycles of intense energy, followed by profound lethargy, periods of extreme talkativeness giving way to withdrawn silence. His decision-making could be impaired and his judgment clouded. The deep-seated kindness and empathy that defined his public persona were sometimes eclipsed by the unpredictable nature of his drug use, leading to strained relationships with band members, management, and his inner circle. The quiet desperation that accompanied these public and private struggles was a constant undercurrent. Despite the outward success and the adoration of his fans, Johnny Cash was battling a formidable internal foe. Each public misstep or private moment of chaos was a testament to the powerful grip of his addiction, a stark contrast to the composed and authoritative figure he projected to the world. These years marked a period of profound internal conflict, where the man and the myth were increasingly at odds, threatening to unravel the very foundations of his life and career. Amidst the increasing turbulence of Johnny Cash's life, a presence began to emerge that would eventually become a profound source of stability and hope. This was June Carter, a woman whose roots were as deeply embedded in country music as his own. Born into the legendary Carter family, one of the foundational groups of country music, June had been performing since childhood. Her background was rich with musical heritage, steeped in the traditions of Appalachian folk and gospel. June Carter possessed a vivacious personality, a sparkling energy that seemed to radiate outward. She was known for her comedic timing, her engaging stage presence, and a genuine warmth that drew people to her. Unlike Johnny, whose public persona often carried a weighty intensity, June brought a lightness and an infectious joy to her performances and interactions. She was a natural entertainer, a gifted vocalist, and a skilled multi-instrumentalist, capable of captivating an audience with ease. Their paths had crossed professionally many times throughout the years, as both were fixtures on the country music circuit. June had toured with Johnny Cash and his band since the early 1960s, initially as part of her family's act, and later as a solo performer and backing vocalist. During these tours, she observed Johnny's struggles with a compassionate yet clear-eyed perspective. She understood the pressures of the road and the temptations that came with fame, having navigated them herself from a young age. Her influence on Johnny Cash was not overtly dramatic or confrontational, but rather a quiet, persistent presence. She did not preach or condemn. Instead, she offered a steady hand and a listening ear. June provided a grounding force amidst the chaos that often surrounded him. She encouraged him to attend church, to reconnect with his faith, and to consider the long-term consequences of his actions. Her approach was firm, yet always imbued with a deep sense of care and understanding. June Carter became a beacon in Johnny Cash's life, a person who saw beyond the public image and the addiction, recognizing the gentle soul beneath. She represented a different path, a healthier way of living, and her unwavering presence began to subtly chip away at the walls he had built around himself. Her quiet guidance offered him a vision of a life free from the grip of dependency, a life where joy and stability were not just fleeting moments but attainable realities. She offered not just companionship but a profound form of steadfast support, planting seeds of hope in a period otherwise marked by increasing despair. Beyond June Carter herself, Johnny Cash found a deeper connection with the entire Carter family. This venerable musical dynasty, often referred to as the first family of country music, offered him an environment far removed from the isolating chaos of his addiction. Their lives were interwoven with the very fabric of American folk and country traditions, a heritage that resonated deeply with Cash's own appreciation for authentic storytelling music. The Carter family's musical legacy was immense, built upon the pioneering work of A.P. Carter, Sarah Carter, and Maybelle Carter. They were instrumental in shaping the sound of early country, collecting and preserving traditional songs, and creating new ones that spoke to the everyday experiences of rural America. Johnny had long admired their contributions, often citing them as a significant influence on his own artistic development. To be welcomed into their fold was not merely a professional association, but an entry into a living history of American music. What truly set the Carter family apart, and what proved to be a quiet counterpoint to Johnny's turmoil, was their profound spiritual foundation. Their music, while encompassing themes of love and hardship, was often imbued with a strong sense of faith, drawing heavily from gospel hymns and spirituals. This spiritual grounding extended beyond their performances, permeating their daily lives and family interactions. They were a family of deep conviction, whose values were rooted in church and community. For Johnny, who had always held a deep, if sometimes struggling, personal faith, the Carter family offered a reconnection to that spiritual anchor. In their presence, he found an atmosphere of calm and principled living that had been largely absent from his own life during his darkest period. There was a quiet strength in their steadfastness, a gentle reminder of the moral compass that he felt he had lost. They did not judge him for his struggles, but rather enveloped him in a supportive, loving environment. Mother Maybelle, the matriarch in particular, extended a maternal care that resonated with Johnny. The family's collective embrace provided a space where he could begin to heal, where the values of home, faith, and simple living were celebrated. This immersion into the Carter family's world offered Johnny Cash a vital lifeline, a spiritual and musical refuge that gently pulled him away from the precipice of his self-destructive path and towards a quieter, more grounded existence. Amidst the tumultuous currents of Johnny Cash's life, the developing relationship with June Carter unfolded with a distinctive blend of persistence and patience. It was not a sudden romance, but a gradual, almost deliberate blossoming, nurtured by June's unwavering commitment to his well-being. She observed his struggles with a clear eye, understanding the depth of his internal conflict and the powerful grip of his dependencies. June's support was not passive. It was an active, consistent presence, often manifesting as quiet determination. She did not preach or condemn, but instead offered a steady hand and a compassionate ear. When his behaviour became erratic, or his despair overwhelming, she remained steadfast, a beacon of calm in his personal storms. Her approach was practical and grounded, focused on small, consistent efforts to guide him toward healthier choices. She understood the complexities of addiction, recognizing that true change required more than simple willpower. Her method involved subtle encouragement, gentle interventions, and a tireless belief in his underlying goodness. There were countless moments when she would physically intercede, preventing him from acquiring substances or simply being present to talk him through a craving. Her home became a sanctuary, a place where he could find respite from the pressures of his career and the temptations that lurked elsewhere. June's patience was truly remarkable. She endured public embarrassment and private heartache, yet her resolve rarely wavered. She saw beyond the addiction to the man she believed Johnny truly was, a sensitive, so spiritual artist with a profound capacity for love and empathy. This vision of him, held firm by her, became a powerful motivating force as he grappled with his demons. Their shared musical journey also played a crucial role in deepening their bond. Performing together, writing songs and collaborating on stage created a unique intimacy. Music became a language through which they could communicate understanding and hope, a shared purpose that transcended his personal difficulties. Their duet, Jackson, a playful yet poignant exchange between a man and a woman, subtly mirrored the dynamic of their own evolving relationship, a spirited back and forth, grounded in affection. Through her quiet strength and relentless dedication, June Carter became more than a companion. She became an anchor. Her love was a force of healing, a testament to the transformative power of steadfast support. It was a love that asked for little in return but offered everything, slowly but surely guiding Johnny Cash towards a path of recovery and ultimately a shared future. The proposal itself, a moment often recounted with a gentle smile, occurred during a concert in London, Ontario, in February of 1968. It was a public declaration, yet deeply personal in its implications, signifying a quiet turning point in Johnny Cash's life. For some time, the question of marriage between Johnny and June had been a whispered hope among those close to them, a natural progression given the depth of their connection and June's steadfast presence during his most challenging years. On that particular evening, as they stood together on stage, performing their lively duet Jackson, Johnny Cash paused the music. The audience, accustomed to his spontaneous energy, fell into a hushed anticipation. He turned to June, his voice carrying a sincerity that transcended the performance. He asked her, simply and directly, to marry him. June, for her part, was initially taken aback. Though their bond was undeniable, the public nature of the question, delivered in the midst of a concert, was unexpected. She hesitated for a moment, a natural human reaction to such a significant and sudden query, before her smile broadened and she accepted. The roar of the crowd that followed was not just for the spectacle, but for the palpable sense of relief and joy that emanated from the stage. This public proposal was more than a romantic gesture. It was a profound statement of intent from Johnny Cash. It quietly marked his desire for a new, healthier life, a conscious decision to anchor himself to the stability and love that June Carter represented. It was a symbolic severing from the chaotic patterns of his past, a public vow to embrace a future built on shared faith, mutual respect, and enduring commitment. For years, June had been the quiet force, guiding him, supporting him, and waiting with unwavering patience. The proposal was his acknowledgement of her unwavering presence, a recognition of the profound impact she had made on his very existence. It was a quiet declaration that he was ready to fully commit to the path she had helped him discover, a path away from the destructive habits that had plagued him. The moment resonated deeply within their circle and with their audience, who had witnessed, directly or indirectly, the struggles he had faced. It signified a hope for redemption, a belief in second chances, and the enduring power of love to transform a life. This public commitment laid a new foundation, a visible promise of stability and a shared future, moving forward from a place of clarity and sincere intention. Following the public proposal, Johnny Cash and June Carter were married on March 1st, 1968, in Franklin, Kentucky. This union marked not merely a change in marital status, but the commencement of a deeply significant new chapter in Johnny's life, one quietly dedicated to healing and stability. Their marriage was not a magical cure for his struggles, but it provided a profound and necessary foundation for his ongoing journey towards sobriety. June's role in this new phase was central, yet her efforts were often quiet and persistent rather than dramatic. She understood the deep-seated nature of addiction and approached his struggles with a compassionate resolve born of her own strong faith and practical wisdom. Her presence created an environment of unconditional love and acceptance, which was crucial for Johnny as he confronted the profound challenges of withdrawal and the psychological battle against his dependencies. The support system extended beyond June. The entire Carter family, with their deeply ingrained values of faith, family, and hard work, enveloped Johnny. They offered not judgment, but a consistent example of a life lived with purpose and sobriety. This collective embrace provided a safe harbour, a place where he could feel genuinely supported without the constant pressures and temptations of his earlier touring life. Their home, a refuge from the road, became a place of quiet recovery. Initial steps towards sobriety were arduous and often marked by setbacks. Addiction is a complex and formidable adversary, and the path to recovery is rarely linear. However, with June's unwavering support and the steady presence of the Carter family, Johnny began to make tangible progress. These were not public victories, but private daily battles fought within the quiet confines of their home and his own spirit. June's approach involved not only emotional support, but also practical guidance. She helped him manage his schedule, encouraged healthier routines, and gently steered him away from situations that might trigger a relapse. Her calm determination was a steady hand, guiding him through the often turbile waters of early sobriety. This period was characterized by a gradual relearning of how to live without the crutch of substances, a process that required immense fortitude from Johnny and unending patience from June. The marriage thus became a crucible for transformation. It was a commitment not just between two people, but a commitment to a different way of life, one centered on health, faith, and the enduring power of love. This new chapter, though challenging, offered the promise of a sustained peace that had long eluded him. Emerging from the personal transformations that defined the late 1960s, Johnny Cash found himself at the precipice of a new kind of mainstream visibility. In 1969, ABC television launched The Johnny Cash Show, a weekly musical variety program that would quietly redefine his public image and bring his unique artistry into millions of American homes. Filmed at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, this show was not merely another television program. It became a gentle cultural phenomenon, reflecting a broad appeal that transcended conventional musical boundaries. The format of The Johnny Cash Show was straightforward yet remarkably effective. Each episode featured Cash performing his own material, often accompanied by the Tennessee Three and the Carter family, including June. However, what truly set the programme apart was its eclectic array of guest stars. Cash, with his innate respect for diverse musical traditions, welcomed artists from across the spectrum: folk singers, rock and roll icons, country legends, and even emerging songwriters. This quiet eclecticism showcased his own expansive musical tastes and his belief in the unifying power of song. Viewers tuning in on Saturday nights might see Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, or Louis Armstrong sharing the stage with country stalwarts like Merle Haggard or Loretta Lynn. This blending of genres, at a time when musical categories were often rigidly defined, demonstrated Cash's quiet authority and his ability to bridge disparate worlds. He presented these artists not as novelties, but as fellow travellers in the vast landscape of American music, fostering an atmosphere of mutual respect and artistic collaboration. For Johnny Cash himself, the show offered a platform to communicate directly with a vast audience, allowing him to present his authentic self, and free from the sensationalism that sometimes accompanied his earlier career. His calm, deliberate presence and his resonant baritone voice became a familiar and comforting fixture in living rooms across the nation. The show subtly reinforced his image as the man in black, a figure of integrity and quiet conviction, someone who spoke for the common person and championed the underdog. The success of The Johnny Cash Show was a testament to his enduring appeal and his growing stature as a cultural figure. It provided a steady, reassuring presence during a tumultuous period in American history, offering a space where diverse voices could be heard and appreciated. Running for 2 seasons, it cemented Johnny Cash's place not just as a country music star, but as a beloved national treasure, Sisti quietly weaving his narratives and melodies into the fabric of mainstream consciousness. This period marked a profound expansion of his influence, solidifying his role as an artist capable of connecting with virtually everyone. The true essence of the Johnny Cash Show resided not just in Cash's own performances, but in the remarkable tapestry of guest artists he quietly invited onto his stage. This deliberate curation of talent served a purpose beyond mere entertainment. It became a subtle yet powerful instrument for bridging musical and cultural divides in a period often marked by stark societal contrasts. One of the most notable appearances was that of Bob Dylan, a figure synonymous with the counterculture movement of the 1960s. Their shared performance of Girl from the North Country on the show was a quiet, profound moment, and symbolising a connection between 2 seemingly disparate musical worlds, traditional folk and emerging rock. This collaboration suggested a deeper kinship, an acknowledgement of common roots and shared artistic spirit, presented with a calm dignity that transcended any perceived generational or stylistic gaps. Beyond Dylan, Cash extended his invitation to an astonishing array of artists. Folk luminaries like Joni Mitchell and Neil Young found a welcoming platform, their introspective songwriting resonating within the Ryman Auditorium. These appearances gently introduced their artistry to an audience that might not have otherwise encountered it, fostering a quiet appreciation for diverse lyrical expressions. Perhaps even more striking was the presence of jazz legends such as Louis Armstrong. To see the revered trumpet player perform alongside Cash was a quiet testament to music's universal language. It underscored Cash's belief that good music knew no genre, no race, and no specific demographic. These moments were not presented as spectacles, but as natural convergences of artistic talent, emphasizing harmony over difference. The show also regularly featured a broad spectrum of country music artists, from established stars to rising talents, ensuring that the roots of his own music remained firmly acknowledged. Yet it was the inclusion of artists from the worlds of rock, pop, and blues that truly broadened the show's cultural impact. Cash, with his calm demeanour and genuine respect for each guest, created an environment where these artists could present their work authentically, often engaging in quiet, a thoughtful dialogue or collaborative performances. Through this understated yet impactful approach, the Johnny Cash Show gently encouraged its audience to look beyond preconceived notions. It demonstrated, week after week, that shared humanity and artistic expression could quietly overcome barriers, fostering a sense of understanding and mutual respect. Cash's stage became a place where different sounds and stories converged, creating a harmonious echo that resonated far beyond the confines of the television screen. Amidst the burgeoning success of the Johnny Cash Show and the newfound stability in his personal life, a quiet joy entered Johnny Cash's world in March of 1970, with the birth of his son, John Carter Cash. This event marked a significant turning point, bringing a profound sense of renewal and purpose to a man who had navigated years of internal turmoil and external pressures. For Cash, who already had 4 daughters from his first marriage, the arrival of a son with June Carter was a different kind of experience. This period was characterized by a stability that had often eluded him in earlier years. The chaotic rhythms of addiction had receded, replaced by the steadying presence of June and the comforting routine of family life at their home in Hendersonville. The birth of John Carter occurred within this calmer context, allowing Cash to embrace fatherhood from a more settled and reflective vantage point. The presence of a new child in the home brought a gentle focus to his daily existence. It offered a quiet reminder of the future and a tangible symbol of the enduring bond he shared with June. This renewed sense of familial responsibility was not a burden, but rather a source of deep satisfaction. It provided an anchor, grounding him further in the life he was painstakingly building, brick by quiet brick, with June's unwavering support. Cash had always possessed a profound, if sometimes complicated, love for his children. However, the circumstances surrounding John Carter's birth allowed him to experience the early years of fatherhood with a clarity and presence that had been challenging during the more tumultuous periods of his life. He found quiet moments of contentment in the simple routines of family life, away from the glare of the stage lights. The arrival of John Carter Cash also subtly influenced Cash's creative output, imbuing his work with a sense of mature reflection and gratitude. While his public persona as the Man in Black remained, the private man was experiencing a gentle domesticity that provided a vital counterpoint to the demands of his career. This period of stability and paternal joy allowed him to continue his artistic explorations from a place of inner calm. The young John Carter grew up surrounded by the rich musical traditions of both the Cash and Carter families, a heritage that would later profoundly shape his own life and career. For Johnny Cash, however, his son's birth represented more than just an addition to the family. It was a quiet affirmation of his journey towards a healthier, more grounded existence, a testament to the transformative power of love and stability. It was a period where the quiet joy of fatherhood intertwined seamlessly with his ongoing personal and professional evolution. Even as the glow of the Johnny Cash Show began to fade from weekly television screens, Johnny Cash's artistic drive remained a quiet, consistent force. Throughout the 1970s and into the early 1980s, his recording career continued with remarkable prolificacy, marked by an exploration of diverse genres and themes that showcased the breadth of his musical interests. He was a constant presence in the recording studio, driven by an inherent need to create and communicate through song. During this period, Cash did not confine himself to a single musical lane. While his core sound remained rooted in country music, his albums often ventured into gospel, more folk, and even more experimental territories. He continued to record deeply spiritual albums, reflecting his steadfast faith and providing solace to listeners who shared his convictions. These gospel recordings were not merely commercial endeavours, but genuine expressions of his personal journey and beliefs. His thematic explorations were equally varied. He continued to champion the underdog, telling stories of ordinary lives, historical figures, and the often overlooked corners of American experience. Albums from this era might feature traditional folk ballads alongside newly penned narratives, each delivered with his distinctive resonant baritone. The quiet authority in his voice lent weight to every lyric, whether it was a tale of hardship or a hymn of praise. Cash's collaborative spirit also continued to thrive. He frequently worked with other artists, broadening his musical palette and demonstrating his enduring respect for fellow musicians. These collaborations often resulted in unique recordings that blended his iconic style with new influences, further illustrating his willingness to evolve and adapt within the ever-changing musical landscape. Despite shifts in public taste and the emergence of new musical trends, Cash maintained a steady output of albums. This consistency was a testament to his deep-seated passion for music and his unwavering commitment to his craft. He approached each recording session with a quiet dedication, meticulously shaping the sound and message of each track. The recording studio was a sanctuary, a place where he could translate his thoughts and experiences into enduring musical forms. This era saw the release of numerous albums, each contributing to the vast tapestry of his discography. While not every project achieved the widespread commercial success of his earlier hits, they collectively demonstrated a relentless artistic curiosity and an authentic desire to connect with his audience on a deeper level. The quiet hum of creativity was a constant in Johnny Cash's life, a steady rhythm underlying his public performances and private moments alike, ensuring his voice continued to echo through the airwaves and into the hearts of his listeners. As the 1980s unfolded, a remarkable convergence of musical titans began to take shape, leading to the formation of a supergroup that would leave an indelible mark on country music. This was the Highwaymen, a quartet of singular voices and storied careers. Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Chris Christopherson. The genesis of this collaboration was not born of grand commercial design, but rather from a shared sense of camaraderie and mutual respect among these long-standing friends and peers. The idea for the group emerged organically, a natural extension of the deep personal and professional bonds that had developed over decades. These were men who had traversed similar paths in the music industry, each forging a distinctive identity, while often battling against Nashville's more conventional currents. There was a quiet understanding among them, an unspoken recognition of their shared experiences and independent spirits. When these four legends finally came together in the recording studio, a unique alchemy occurred. The individual power of each artist, already formidable on its own, seemed to amplify in the presence of the others. There was a relaxed ease in their interactions, a comfortable rhythm that permeated their sessions. They were not competing, but rather complementing each other, weaving their distinct vocal textures into a rich, harmonious whole. The quiet power of the Highwaymen lay in this collective strength. Each member brought their iconic voice, their signature phrasing, and their vast repertoire of life experience to the project. Johnny Cash's deep, resonant baritone anchored the sound, while Willie Nelson's distinctive phrasing, Waylon Jennings' rugged delivery, and Chris Christopherson's poetic sensibility each contributed essential layers. Their combined presence created a sound that was at once familiar and entirely new, a testament to their enduring artistry. The formation of the Highwaymen was more than just a musical endeavour. It was a gathering of kindred spirits. Their time together was often characterised by quiet conversations, shared stories, and the comfortable silence that only long-standing friendships can provide. The recordings that emerged from these sessions carried an authenticity that resonated deeply with audiences, capturing the essence of their collective journey and their individual legacies. Their debut album, simply titled Highwayman, released in 1985, became a significant success. The title track, a haunting ballad about reincarnation and enduring spirit, perfectly encapsulated the timeless quality of their collaboration. It was a powerful statement from four men who had shaped the landscape of American music, now standing together, their voices united in a quiet testament of friendship and enduring artistry. Despite the quiet triumph and commercial success of the Highwaymen, the late 1980s and early 1990s presented a period of significant challenge for Johnny Cash's solo career. The musical landscape of Nashville was undergoing a profound shift, with new sounds and younger artists capturing the attention of radio programmers and record executives. For an artist of Cash's stature and long-standing presence, this evolution brought with it a quiet yet persistent sense of being overlooked. His records, once guaranteed chart toppers, began to sell with less vigour. Radio airplay, a crucial component of commercial visibility, became increasingly scarce. The distinctive, unvarnished style that had defined his career, and which had once been revolutionary, Dia was now perceived by some within the industry as out of step with contemporary trends. There was a subtle yet palpable distance growing between Cash's artistic vision and the prevailing commercial currents. This era, often referred to as his wilderness years, was marked by a quiet frustration. It was not a period of idleness, for Cash continued to write, record and perform with unwavering dedication. However, the commercial machinery that had once so readily supported his work now seemed less interested, less invested. He found himself navigating a system that appeared to have moved on, embracing a different aesthetic, a different sound. The quiet hum of his earlier commercial engines had slowed, almost to a halt. Record labels, driven by market demands and the pursuit of the next big trend, began to view Cash as an artist whose best years were behind him. The narrative shifted from celebrating his enduring legacy to questioning his relevance in a rapidly changing industry. This perception, though rarely stated directly, manifested in a lack of promotional support, reduced recording budgets, and a general disinterest in his new material. For an artist who had always connected so directly with his audience, this commercial marginalization was a source of quiet contemplation. He had always been a man apart, charting his own course, but now that independence seemed to be working against him in the eyes of the mainstream. The industry, which had once championed his authenticity, now seemed to prefer a more polished, commercially tailored sound. Yet, even in these quieter times, Johnny Cash's artistic spirit remained undimmed. He continued to create, to explore, and to maintain his connection with the loyal fan base that had followed him through every chapter of his remarkable career. The frustration was real, but it was a quiet internal struggle, one he met with characteristic resilience, waiting patiently for the moment when his singular voice would once again resonate with the wider world. Alongside the quiet frustrations of his professional life during the late 1980s and early 1990s, Johnny Cash was simultaneously engaged in a deeply personal and often private battle with his own health. The relentless pace of decades spent touring, recording, and performing had taken a cumulative toll on his body. Various ailments, some minor, others more significant, began to manifest with increasing frequency, adding another layer of challenge to his already demanding existence. His physical resilience, once a defining characteristic, began to wane. He endured a series of medical procedures, each requiring a period of recovery and adjustment. These were not dramatic events often publicized, but rather quiet interruptions to his daily life, moments of vulnerability away from the public eye. Surgeries for issues ranging from dental problems to more complex internal conditions became a recurring theme, requiring him to summon an inner strength not only for his recovery, but also to maintain his professional commitments. One of the more persistent issues he faced was related to his vision. Cash underwent several eye surgeries to address various conditions, including cataracts. These procedures, while ultimately beneficial, involved delicate recovery periods and the temporary impairment of a sense crucial to his ability to read, write, and navigate the world. For an artist whose work often involved meticulous lyric writing and careful observation, these visual challenges were a quiet impediment. Beyond specific surgical interventions, Cash also contended with a general decline in his physical vigour. The weariness of constant travel and the demands of performance grew heavier. He experienced periods of unexplained fatigue and various aches and pains that were simply part of aging, compounded by a life lived intensely. These were not the dramatic falls from grace that had marked his earlier struggles with addiction, but rather a slow, steady erosion of physical comfort and ease. This quiet battle with his health ran parallel to his career struggles, often unseen by the public. While the music industry debated his relevance, Cash was often privately enduring recovery, managing discomfort, and adapting to new physical limitations. June Carter Cash, as she'd done so many times before, became an even more steadfast support during these years, providing comfort, care, and a steady presence as he navigated these personal trials. His enduring commitment to his craft, even amidst these physical challenges, was a testament to his deep-seated passion for music. Despite the pain, the fatigue, and the quiet indignities of aging, he continued to perform and record, often pushing himself through discomfort, embodying a profound dedication that transcended the commercial trends of the moment. It was a period of quiet endurance, where his personal resilience was tested as much as his professional standing. As the mainstream music industry seemed to quietly turn its back on Johnny Cash, perceiving him as a relic of a bygone era, an unexpected connection began to form. This new chapter commenced with the introduction of Rick Rubin, a record producer known for his unconventional approach and his work with artists far removed from the traditional country music landscape. Rubin, a figure associated with the raw energy of hip-hop and rock, might have seemed an unlikely partner for the Man in Black. Yet, it was precisely this divergence that would prove to be revolutionary. Rubin's initial contact with Cash was not born of a desire to capitalize on a fading star, but rather from a deep and abiding reverence for Cash's fundamental artistry. He saw beyond the commercial struggles and the changing tides of popular music, recognizing the timeless power of Cash's voice, his storytelling, and his inherent authenticity. Rubin's approach was not to reinvent Johnny Cash, but to strip away the layers of conventional production that had accumulated over the years, revealing the pure essence of his musical soul. Their early conversations were marked by a quiet respect. Rubin did not arrive with grand plans for commercial resurgence or a desire to modernize Cash's sound. Instead, he expressed a profound appreciation for Cash's body of work, his gravitas, and his unwavering integrity. This understanding resonated deeply with Cash, who had long felt a disconnect from the Nashville establishment and its increasingly polished aesthetic. Rubin saw Cash not as an old country singer, but as a singular American artist, a true original. The vision for their collaboration, which would eventually become the American Recording Series, was deceptively simple. Rubin proposed recording Cash primarily with just his voice and an acoustic guitar, in intimate settings, allowing the raw power of his delivery and the profound emotional weight of the songs to take center stage. This stripped-down approach was a radical departure from the multi-instrumental arrangements that had defined much of Cash's later career. Rubin's quiet reverence for Cash's artistry was the foundation of this partnership. He understood that Cash did not need elaborate production or trendy sounds. He simply needed a space to sing, to tell stories, and to connect directly with the listener, unencumbered by external expectations. This understanding would unlock a new, profound, and universally acclaimed phase of Cash's musical journey, bringing his voice to an entirely new generation of listeners who recognized the timeless truth in his sound. The genesis of the American recording series was rooted in a profound simplicity, a deliberate act of stripping away all artifice. Rick Rubin's vision for Johnny Cash was not about elaborate studio wizardry or contemporary trends, but rather about returning to the fundamental power of a man and his song. The recordings were characterized by an acoustic sparseness, often featuring only Cash's resonant voice, accompanied by his guitar. This minimalist approach was a conscious decision to highlight the raw, unvarnished authenticity that had always been at the core of Cash's appeal. The recording sessions themselves were often intimate affairs, taking place in various unassuming locations, sometimes even in Rubin's living room. This environment fostered a sense of ease and naturalness, allowing Cash to perform with a quiet intensity, unburdened by the pressures of a traditional studio setting. The absence of a full band, of backing vocals, or of complex arrangements meant that every nuance of Cash's weathered baritone and every inflection of his storytelling came to the forefront. Listeners were presented with an unfiltered auditory experience, a direct conduit to the artist's soul. This stripped-down approach allowed Cash's voice, which had deepened and gained a rich, gravelly texture with age, to truly shine. It conveyed a lifetime of experience of joy and sorrow, of faith and doubt, with an unmistakable authority. The acoustic setting amplified the emotional weight of each lyric, transforming familiar songs and new interpretations into profound meditations. The quiet power of his delivery was undeniable, drawing listeners in with an intimacy rarely achieved in more heavily produced recordings. The choice of material for these albums was also significant. Alongside his own compositions, Cash interpreted a diverse array of songs from various genres, including rock, folk, and even industrial music. These covers, performed in his distinctive style, were not mere renditions but profound reimaginings, imbued with his unique perspective and world-weariness. A Nine Inch Nails song, for example, transformed under his touch into a poignant lament, revealing universal themes of pain and redemption. The American recordings thus became a testament to the enduring power of genuine artistry. They bypassed the commercial expectations of the time and tapped into something more primal and timeless. By embracing rawness and authenticity, Rubin and Cash created a series of albums that resonated deeply with a broad audience, reintroducing the Man in Black not as a relic, but as an eternal voice of the human condition, his quiet power more potent than ever before. The quiet, profound, artistic rebirth represented by the American recording series was met with an almost immediate swell of critical acclaim. Music critics, who had largely dismissed Johnny Cash in the preceding years, now found themselves captivated by the raw honesty and stripped-down power of these new recordings. The initial album, simply titled American Recordings, was lauded for its stark beauty and the undeniable gravitas of Cash's voice. It was not merely a return to form, but an evolution, a demonstration of an artist whose wisdom and experience had deepened his craft. Reviewers spoke of a universality in the music, a timeless quality that transcended genre boundaries. They noted how Cash, in his later years, seemed to have distilled his essence, delivering performances that were both vulnerable and immensely powerful. The albums were frequently described as deeply moving, possessing an emotional resonance that resonated with both longtime admirers and a new generation of listeners who had previously been unfamiliar with his work. This quiet reintroduction of Cash to the public consciousness was a significant moment in music history. The renewed public interest was not fleeting. It grew steadily with each subsequent release in the series. These albums consistently earned high praise, appearing on numerous best of lists and garnering prestigious awards. The Grammy Awards, for instance, recognized the brilliance of these recordings, bestowing upon Cash accolades that cemented his status as a vital, contemporary artist, not merely a historical figure. This recognition was particularly meaningful, given the commercial challenges and health struggles he had faced just a few years prior. This resurgence was distinct from his earlier periods of superstardom. It was not characterized by flashy marketing campaigns or massive chart-topping singles, but by a deeper, more artistic appreciation. The audience drawn to these albums seemed to value authenticity and emotional depth above all else. They connected with Cash's unadorned storytelling and the palpable sense of life lived that emanated from every note. It was a testament to the enduring power of an artist who, even in his twilight years, continued to explore and express the human condition with unparalleled sincerity. The critical acclaim and renewed public embrace underscored that true artistry, when allowed to breathe freely, can always find its way back to the hearts of listeners, creating a quiet but profound impact. One of the most remarkable aspects of the American Recording series was Johnny Cash's uncanny ability to reinterpret contemporary songs, transforming them into something uniquely his own. He approached these tracks not as mere covers, but as profound opportunities to imbue existing narratives with the weight of his own life experience and perspective. This process was particularly evident in his rendition of Hurt, originally written and performed by 9 Inch Nails. When Cash's version of Hurt was released, it resonated with an intensity that surprised many. The song, in its original form, was an anguished expression of despair and self-destruction. In Cash's hands, however, it acquired a new layer of quiet gravitas. His weathered voice, imbued with decades of struggle, faith and survival, lent the lyrics a profound sense of regret and hard-won wisdom. The raw, unadorned acoustic arrangement allowed every word to hang in the air, weighted with the echoes of a long and complex life. It became less about immediate pain and more about the enduring consequences of choices made, a reflection on mortality and legacy. This transformative power was not limited to Hurt. Across the American recordings, Cash took on songs from a diverse array of artists, including Soundgarden's Rusty Cage, Depeche Mode's Personal Jesus, and Nick Cave's The Mercy Seat. In each instance, he stripped away the original production, leaving only the essential melody and lyrics, which he then reclothed in his own sonic language. He did not attempt to mimic the original artists. Instead, he filtered the songs through his distinct artistic lens, finding universal truths within their modern expressions. His interpretations often brought out hidden meanings or amplified existing themes, revealing layers that might have been less apparent in the original versions. A song about youthful angst, for instance, might become a meditation on aging and acceptance when sung by Cash. A lament of loss could transform into a testament to enduring love or faith. This ability to recontextualize and deepen the emotional impact of contemporary material demonstrated not only his interpretive genius, but also the timeless nature of his artistry. The quiet authority in his voice, coupled with the sparse arrangements, allowed the storytelling to take center stage. He didn't just sing the words, he embodied them, drawing from his vast well of personal history to give each phrase an undeniable authenticity. These iconic covers did more than introduce Cash to a younger audience. They showcased his profound capacity to connect with universal human experiences, bridging generational divides and proving that a great song, when delivered by a truly great artist, can transcend its origins and speak to the soul across time. The impact of Johnny Cash's rendition of Hurt was profoundly amplified by its accompanying music video, directed by Mark Romanek. This visual interpretation became a quiet, powerful testament to Cash's entire life, transforming the song into a deeply personal eulogy, both for himself and for the fading memories of his past. The video, released in 2003, just months before his passing, served as a poignant capstone to his extraordinary journey. Romanek's approach was understated yet devastatingly effective. The imagery was a carefully curated mosaic of Cash's life, an interweaving archival footage from his youth and prime with stark contemporary scenes of the aging artist. The video opens with shots of the dilapidated House of Cash Museum in Hendersonville, Tennessee, a place that once celebrated his vibrant career now appearing forgotten and decaying. This setting immediately established a mood of melancholic reflection, mirroring the song's themes of loss and the relentless passage of time. As Cash, visibly frail and reflective, sings the haunting lyrics, the camera captures close-ups of his face, etched with the lines of experience. His eyes, though dimmed by age, still held an intense emotional resonance. These intimate shots were interspersed with fleeting glimpses of his past. The vibrant young performer, the rebellious man in black, moments with June Carter Cash, Arfund, and the joyous camaraderie of his early career. These quick cuts created a powerful juxtaposition between the robust energy of his younger years and the quiet solitude of his present. The visual storytelling conveyed a sense of profound introspection. There were images of a broken piano, a dusty gold record, and faded photographs, artifacts of a glorious past now tinged with a sense of poignant finality. The video depicted Cash not as a mythic figure, but as a human being confronting his own mortality, reflecting on a life lived fully, with its triumphs and its regrets. The Hurt video was more than just a promotional tool. It was an artistic statement, a visual poem that encapsulated the essence of Johnny Cash's journey. It allowed viewers to witness, in a deeply personal way, the weight of his experiences, of the quiet strength that remained, and the profound sense of peace found in acceptance. Its quiet dignity and raw honesty resonated deeply with audiences, cementing its place as one of the most moving and impactful music videos in history, a final, indelible portrait of a true American icon. The spring of 2003 brought with it a profound sorrow that would deeply alter the remaining days of Johnny Cash. On May 15th, June Carter Cash, his beloved wife, partner in music, and unwavering anchor for 35 years, passed away quietly at the age of 73. Her death was not sudden, but followed complications from heart surgery. For Johnny, this loss was devastating, representing the departure of the person who'd been the most consistent and vital presence in his adult life. Their bond transcended the conventional definitions of marriage. June was not merely his spouse, she was his confidant, his spiritual guide, his comedic foil, and, crucially, the steadfast force who'd helped him navigate the turbulent waters of addiction and despair. She'd stood by him through his darkest hours, offering a unique blend of tough love, humour, and unwavering faith that he often credited with saving his life. Her presence had been a constant source of stability, joy, and inspiration, woven intricately into the fabric of his personal and professional existence. The immediate impact of June's passing on Johnny was palpable and immediate. He was already contending with his own declining health, a body weakened by years of various ailments and the natural progression of age. The emotional weight of losing June seemed to diminish his own will to continue, that those close to him observed a deep sadness settle upon him, a quiet resignation that suggested a spirit bruised beyond repair. The light that June had brought into his world seemed to have been extinguished. leaving him in a profound and unfamiliar darkness. He spoke publicly of his grief, often with a raw vulnerability that was uncharacteristic of the stoic man in black. During one of his final performances, just a few weeks after June's death, he dedicated a song to her, his voice trembling with emotion as he recounted her enduring influence and their enduring love. It was clear to everyone present that a fundamental part of him had been torn away. June's departure created an irreplaceable void. For decades, their lives had been intertwined, their careers often running parallel, their home a sanctuary of music and family. Her absence was not merely the loss of a loved one, but the removal of a central pillar supporting his very being. The quiet devastation of her death marked the beginning of Johnny Cash's final chapter, a period defined by an acute sense of loneliness and a profound longing for the woman who had been his truest companion. The profound loss he experienced would shadow his remaining months, underscoring the depth of a love that had truly shaped his entire adult life. Even in the profound shadow of June's passing, and despite the increasing frailty of his own body, Johnny Cash continued to seek solace and expression through his music. His quiet determination to record, even in his final months, stands as a testament to an enduring artistic spirit that defied physical limitations and overwhelming grief. The act of making music, it seemed, was as essential to him as breathing, a fundamental aspect of his identity that even the deepest sorrow could not extinguish. Rick Rubin, his producer and friend, observed this unwavering drive. He understood that for Johnny, recording was more than a professional endeavour. It was a form of spiritual sustenance, a way to process the vast emotional landscape of his later years. The sessions continued at his home studio, often with Johnny seated, sometimes frail and visibly weakened, yet still possessing that singular focus when the microphone was live. The comfort of the familiar space, surrounded by loved ones and the tools of his craft, provided a haven where his voice, though aged and weathered, could still convey immense power and emotion. These final recordings, made in the summer of 2003, were imbued with a raw intimacy, a sense of profound reflection. His voice, now more fragile, carried the weight of his experiences, the joy, the struggle, the faith, and now the acute sorrow of loss. There was no pretense, no attempt to disguise the pain. Instead, he embraced it, allowing it to colour the timbre of his singing and the interpretation of each lyric. The songs chosen for these sessions often touched upon themes of mortality, redemption, and enduring love, resonating with a deeper poignancy given his circumstances. This period of creation was a remarkable demonstration of resilience. It was not a grand public spectacle, but a quiet, intensely personal act of defiance against the encroaching darkness. Each note sung, each chord played, was a small victory, a reaffirmation of his purpose. The music became a channel for his grief, a way to keep June's memory alive, and perhaps a means to prepare for his own inevitable journey. The recordings made during these final months would later form the basis for posthumously released albums, extending the American Recording series. They offered a final intimate glimpse into the soul of an artist who, until his very last days, remained dedicated to his craft. This quiet determination to create, to find beauty and truth in the face of immense personal hardship, cemented his legacy not just as a musician, but as an artist whose spirit remained vibrant and expressive until the very end. It was a final poignant act, an enduring echo of the man in black's unyielding artistic soul. In the quiet stillness of his last days, the world seemed to narrow for Johnny Cash, concentrating on the essential elements of his life. The profound grief over June's absence had settled deeply within him, yet amidst this sorrow, a sense of quiet contemplation began to emerge. His home in Hendersonville, Tennessee, once filled with vibrant music and the laughter of his family, now held a more subdued atmosphere, a space for reflection and preparation. His health, already significantly compromised by various ailments, continued its gentle decline. The once robust figure, known for his imposing stage presence, was now marked by a fragility that belied his inner strength. Yet, even in this physical weakening, there was an unmistakable dignity, a quiet acceptance of the natural progression of life and its inevitable end. For Johnny Cash, faith had always been a cornerstone, a compass guiding him through both the brightest and darkest periods. In these final moments, his spiritual convictions became an even more profound source of comfort. He had long spoken of his belief in a reunion with loved ones beyond this life, and this hope now offered a gentle peace. He spent time in prayer, reading from his Bible, and engaging in quiet contemplation, drawing strength from the spiritual foundations that had sustained him for decades. His family remained a constant presence, offering comfort and companionship. His son, John Carter Cash, and other close relatives and friends were often by his side, sharing quiet moments, stories, and expressions of love. These interactions were simple, yet deeply meaningful, providing a sense of connection and warmth in his diminishing world. There was a quiet understanding among those around him that he was nearing the end of his earthly journey, and a collective effort to ensure his final days were filled with peace and reassurance. The restlessness that had often characterized earlier periods of his life, the drive for constant movement and performance, had now subsided. It was replaced by a serene stillness, a deep internal calm. He was no longer striving, but simply being, allowing himself to rest in the embrace of his faith and the love of his family. The acceptance of his mortality was not born of resignation, but of a quiet confidence in what lay beyond, a belief that he would once again be reunited with June. On September 12th, 2003, just 4 months after June's passing, Johnny Cash quietly departed. His death was not a sudden shock, but a gentle transition, the culmination of a life lived fully and deeply. He passed peacefully, surrounded by the quiet contemplation that had marked his final days, his faith having provided a profound peace in the face of his own mortality. The calendar turned to September 12th, 2003, a date that would quietly mark the end of a remarkable journey. On this day, in Nashville, Tennessee, Johnny Cash, the man in black, drew his last breath. He was 71 years old. His passing came just 4 months after the death of his beloved wife, June, a loss that had undeniably hastened his own departure. The news of his death rippled gently across the world, eliciting a quiet sorrow from countless individuals who had been touched by his music and his story. There was no sudden shock, for his declining health had been known, and the profound grief he carried for June had been palpable. Instead, a collective sigh seemed to emanate, acknowledging the departure of a unique and influential voice. For many, his passing felt less like an abrupt ending, and more like the completion of a grand, sweeping narrative. Johnny Cash had lived a life of extraordinary breadth and depth, marked by both profound struggles and immense triumphs. He had navigated the complexities of fame, addiction, faith, and love with an unwavering authenticity that resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. His final months, though shadowed by grief and physical frailty, had also been a testament to his enduring spirit. The American recordings had brought him a late career resurgence, allowing his raw, unvarnished artistry to shine through once more. The Hurt music video, released just before his death, served as a poignant, almost prescient visual elegy, a final, vulnerable offering to the world. The quiet sorrow that accompanied his death was intertwined with a profound sense of gratitude for a life so fully lived. He had been a voice for the voiceless, a storyteller of the common man, and a musical innovator who defied categorization. His influence stretched far beyond the confines of country music, touching rock and roll, folk and gospel, leaving an indelible mark on the cultural landscape. His passing marked the end of an era, a final note in a symphony that had spanned decades. Yet, it was also a moment to reflect upon the enduring power of his legacy. Johnny Cash had faced his mortality with a quiet dignity, his faith providing solace, and his love for June remaining an undeniable force. His journey was complete, leaving behind a rich tapestry of music, stories, and an authentic spirit that continues to inspire. In the immediate aftermath of Johnny Cash's passing, a gentle current of tributes began to flow from across the globe. The world, in its own quiet way, acknowledged the departure of a truly singular figure. From the hallowed halls of government to the intimate stages of local music venues, voices rose to honour the man in black. Musicians, both those who had shared stages with him and those who had been profoundly influenced by his work, offered their reflections. Bob Dylan, a contemporary and admirer, spoke of Cash's unique ability to connect with the deepest parts of the human experience. Chris Christopherson, a close friend and collaborator, remembered his unwavering integrity and his compassion for the downtrodden. Younger artists, who had discovered his music through the American recordings, expressed gratitude for his raw honesty and his fearless approach to songwriting. They recognized in him a spirit that transcended genre and generation. Politicians, too, extended their condolences and acknowledged his cultural impact. Statements from leaders recognized not only his artistic achievements, but also his consistent voice for justice and his empathy for those on the margins of society. His advocacy for prison reform, his solidarity with Native American communities, and his unwavering Christian faith were all remembered as integral facets of his public persona. Beyond official statements and celebrity tributes, a more personal form of mourning unfolded among his vast fan base. Radio stations played his iconic songs, now listeners calling in to share their memories and the profound ways his music had touched their lives. Online forums and message boards, still a relatively new phenomenon, became spaces for shared grief and appreciation. People recounted stories of seeing him live, of the comfort his songs provided during difficult times, or simply of the quiet strength they found in his resonant voice. The mourning was not characterized by theatrical displays or overt expressions of shock, but rather by a deep, reflective solemnity. It was the quiet sorrow for a figure who had, for decades, been a constant presence in the cultural landscape, a steadfast voice of authenticity in an often changing world. There was a sense of gratitude for the profound body of work he left behind, a collection of songs that explored themes of sin and redemption, love and loss, hope and despair with an unparalleled candour. The world quietly mourned the loss of a true original, a man whose artistic vision and moral compass had left an indelible mark. His absence created a void, but the echoes of his music and the enduring spirit of his message continued to resonate, a testament to a life lived with purpose and an artistry that transcended the temporal. With the quiet passing of time, Johnny Cash's immediate absence transformed into a lasting presence. His music, rather than fading into memory, settled into a timeless space, continuing to resonate across generations and diverse musical landscapes. It is a quiet, constant hum in the background of contemporary culture, a testament to an artistry that defied easy categorization. The appeal of his work lies perhaps in its profound honesty. Cash sang of struggle, of faith, of love, and of the human condition with an authenticity that remains undiminished. His voice, deep and resonant, carried the weight of experience, imparting a sense of shared understanding to listeners from all walks of life. This raw, unvarnished truth found an audience far beyond the traditional confines of country music. His influence can be observed in unexpected places. Rock musicians cite him as an inspiration for his rebellious spirit and his willingness to challenge convention. Folk artists admire his storytelling prowess and his commitment to narrative integrity. Even in genres like alternative and indie music, echoes of his stark simplicity and emotional depth can be discerned. He bridged gaps that few others could, creating a universality in his particularity. The thematic richness of his songs also contributes to their enduring power. He explored complex moral dilemmas, the search for redemption, and the quiet dignity of ordinary lives. These are themes that remain perennially relevant, speaking to fundamental aspects of human existence. A young person discovering Folsom Prison Blues today might be drawn to its defiant energy, while an older listener might find solace in the reflective wisdom of Hurt. Each song offers multiple layers of meaning, allowing it to connect with individuals at different stages of their lives. His image, too, has become iconic. The man in black, with his solemn gaze and understated attire, conveyed a sense of integrity and purpose. This visual identity, inextricably linked to his musical output, has been adopted and reinterpreted by countless artists and fans, solidifying his place as a cultural archetype. He represented a certain kind of steadfastness, a commitment to his principles that resonated deeply with many. Thus, Johnny Cash's legacy is not merely a collection of recordings, but a living, breathing influence. His voice, though physically silenced, continues to speak through his songs, offering comfort, challenging perceptions, and reminding us of the enduring power of truth expressed through art. It is a quiet, constant presence, weaving itself into the fabric of our collective musical consciousness, a timeless echo of a life fully lived and a message profoundly conveyed. Johnny Cash's influence extended far beyond the confines of musical notes and record grooves. His quiet authenticity, a hallmark of his artistic persona, permeated various facets of culture, leaving an indelible mark on film, literature, and even the broader landscape of social consciousness. He became a symbol, a touchstone for certain values that resonated deeply with many. In the realm of film, Cash's life and music provided rich material for storytelling. His stark, often dramatic narratives, infused with themes of struggle, redemption, and conviction, lent themselves naturally to cinematic interpretation. Documentaries explored his complex journey, while biographical films sought to capture the essence of the man in black. These cinematic portrayals, whether factual or dramatized, further embedded his image and story into the collective consciousness, introducing his legacy to new generations who might not have initially encountered his music. The sound of his voice, too, became a powerful tool for filmmakers, his songs often chosen to underscore poignant moments or to evoke a particular mood in various productions. His connection to literature was also profound. Cash himself was a writer, penning autobiographies and even a novel, demonstrating a literary sensibility that mirrored the narrative depth of his songs. Beyond his own writings, his life story and the cultural landscape he inhabited inspired countless articles, books, and academic studies. Scholars and biographers delved into the intricacies of his character, his faith, and his impact on American culture, treating his life as a significant historical text in itself. His lyrical craftsmanship, often characterized by its directness and evocative imagery, also served as a quiet influence on poets and songwriters, demonstrating the power of simple, than honest language to convey profound truths. Perhaps one of the most significant aspects of his influence beyond music was his quiet, yet persistent engagement with social issues. While not a conventional political activist, Cash used his platform to advocate for the marginalized and the voiceless. His performances at Folsom and San Quentin prisons brought attention to the plight of inmates, humanizing those often forgotten by society. His songs spoke of the struggles of the working class, the injustices faced by Native Americans, and the universal search for dignity. This quiet activism, rooted in empathy and a deep sense of justice, resonated with many who felt overlooked or unheard. He lent his voice not to partisan causes, but to the fundamental principles of compassion and fairness, touching hearts and minds in a way that transcended political divides. Through these varied avenues, film, literature, and his understated social advocacy, Johnny Cash transcended the role of a mere musician. He became a cultural figure whose quiet authenticity left a deep and lasting imprint, shaping perceptions and fostering conversations that extended far beyond the melodies he created. The image of Johnny Cash, perpetually clad in black, was more than a mere stylistic choice. It evolved into a profound symbol, a quiet yet powerful statement that resonated deeply with audiences across generations. This man in black persona became synonymous with a specific set of values: empathy for the downtrodden, a defiant stance against injustice, and an unwavering commitment to speaking for those whose voices were often unheard. It was a visual declaration of purpose, an outward manifestation of his internal convictions. The genesis of this uniform was practical, but its meaning deepened over time. Cash himself explained that he wore black for the poor and the beaten down, for the prisoner who had long paid for his crime, for the sick and lonely, and for those who had no voice. This intention transformed a simple colour into a banner for solidarity. It was not a flamboyant costume designed for spectacle, but rather a sombre, dignified attire that reflected the gravity of the themes he explored in his music and the seriousness with which he approached his role as an artist. This symbolic attire communicated a sense of empathy without the need for overt pronouncements. When Cash walked onto a stage, be it whether in a grand concert hall or within the walls of a penitentiary, his black clothing immediately signalled an alignment with the struggles of ordinary people. It suggested a shared experience, a recognition of hardship, and a refusal to distance himself from the less fortunate. This quiet act of identification built an immediate bridge with his audience, fostering a deep connection rooted in mutual understanding and respect. Furthermore, the man in black represented a subtle form of defiance. In an era often characterized by vibrant colors and elaborate stagewear, Cash's stark simplicity stood out. It was an unspoken rejection of superficiality, a commitment to substance over showmanship. This defiance was not aggressive or confrontational, but rather a steady, unyielding adherence to his own moral compass. It underscored his independence, his refusal to conform to fleeting trends, and his dedication to artistic integrity. He was a figure who stood apart not in isolation, but as a sentinel for truth and authenticity. Ultimately, the man in black became a powerful emblem for speaking for the voiceless. His songs often gave narrative to the experiences of those on the fringes of society: the incarcerated, the impoverished, the heartbroken, and the forgotten. His choice of attire amplified this mission, visually reinforcing his solidarity with these individuals. It was a constant reminder that his music, and indeed his very presence, was dedicated to giving voice to the human condition in its rawest and most honest forms. This quiet, dignified symbol continues to resonate, embodying a timeless message of compassion and integrity. As the echoes of Johnny Cash's life and music gently fade into the annals of history, one profound aspect remains illuminated as his most enduring and significant contribution: an unwavering commitment to authenticity. This was his true gift, a quiet revolution that permeated every facet of his existence, from the resonant timbre of his voice to the unvarnished narratives woven into his songs. It was a legacy built not on flawless perfection, but on the courage to reveal the complexities of the human spirit, his willingness to be vulnerable, to lay bare the struggles that marked his journey, resonated with a depth that few artists achieve. Cash never shied away from acknowledging his own imperfections, his battles with personal demons, and the moral quandaries that shaped his path. This openness, and often expressed through his lyrics and in his public persona, created an unbreakable bond with his audience. Listeners did not just admire him, they recognized a piece of themselves in his honest portrayal of human frailty and resilience. He shared his triumphs with humility and his defeats with a quiet dignity, allowing his true self to emerge without pretense or artifice. This transparency was revolutionary, particularly within an entertainment industry often prone to crafting idealized images. Cash presented himself as he was, a man of faith and flaws, deeply rooted in his heritage, yet constantly grappling with the challenges of life. This authenticity transcended genres and demographics, speaking directly to the universal human experience. This was his quiet revolution. Or it was not a revolution of loud pronouncements or dramatic gestures, but one of steadfast integrity and genuine self-expression. In a world that often encouraged conformity, Johnny Cash stood as a beacon of individuality, demonstrating that true power lay in being unequivocally oneself. He proved that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a source of profound strength, capable of forging connections that ran deeper than fleeting trends or commercial success. His music, therefore, became a testament to this authenticity. Each note, each lyric, carried the weight of lived experience, imbued with an honesty that could not be manufactured. Whether singing of redemption, despair, or the simple joys of life, his voice conveyed an undeniable truthfulness. This commitment to authenticity allowed his work to endure, transcending the specific context of its creation, to speak to new generations who continue to find solace and understanding in his unvarnished artistry. His true gift was the courage to simply be, and in doing so, he offered a profound and lasting legacy to the world. As the story of Johnny Cash comes to its gentle close, the final reflective thought that lingers is the enduring power of his music. Though his voice has long since fallen silent, his songs continue to echo across the landscape of time, a quiet comfort and a steady presence in the world. They are not merely recordings of a bygone era, but living expressions that adapt and resonate with each passing generation, carrying messages that remain as relevant today as they were decades ago. His melodies, often simple in their construction, possess a profound ability to penetrate the heart. They speak of universal human experiences, love and loss, faith and doubt, redemption and regret. It is this timeless quality, rooted in the very fabric of human emotion, that ensures their continued presence. The quiet strum of a guitar, the steady beat, and that unmistakable baritone voice combine to create an atmosphere of contemplation and understanding, inviting listeners into a shared space of reflection. The legacy of Johnny Cash is not merely etched in gold records or critical acclaim. It is woven into the fabric of countless lives touched by his artistry. His songs offer solace in moments of sorrow, strength in times of weakness, and a profound sense of connection for those who feel marginalized or misunderstood. They represent a testament to the power of music to transcend barriers and to speak directly to the soul, offering a silent companionship through life's varied passages. In the stillness of the night, or during a quiet moment of introspection, the quiet echo of his music can still be heard. It's a presence that is both comforting and profound, a reminder of the enduring impact one individual can have through honesty and artistic integrity. His compositions do not demand attention with flashy extravagance, but rather invite it with a humble sincerity that speaks volumes. And so Johnny Cash rests, but his music lives on, a continuous gentle hum in the background of our collective consciousness. It is a testament to a life lived fully, authentically, and with an unwavering commitment to the truth as he understood it. His songs remain, a quiet legacy, a steady hand, offering peace and a lasting impact that continues to unfold with each new listen. His journey may have concluded, but the resonance of his art endures, a quiet echo across the vast expanse of time, and so, our long and quiet journey through the life of Johnny Cash gently draws to its close. We have followed the path of a man whose voice, both in song and in spirit, left an indelible mark upon the world. From the cotton fields of Arkansas to the grand stages of global renown, his story unfolded with a quiet intensity, marked by both profound struggles and remarkable triumphs. The echoes of his music, as we have observed, continue to resonate, a constant presence that transcends the years. They invite us to reflect upon themes of resilience, redemption, and the enduring power of human connection. His was a life lived with a deep sense of purpose, often expressed through the simple yet profound act of sharing his truth through song. As this narrative comes to a peaceful conclusion, we are left with the quiet legacy of Johnny Cash. It is a legacy not of fleeting fame, but of deep, lasting impact, woven into the cultural fabric with threads of authenticity and heartfelt expression. His was a journey that touched countless lives, offering solace, inspiration, and a sense of shared humanity. Now, as the final notes of his story softly fade, we invite you to embrace the stillness, allow the narrative to settle, like dust motes dancing in a fading light, into a gentle calm. The complexities and triumphs of his existence have been laid out, a tapestry of a life fully lived. May the quiet strength of his enduring spirit and the soothing cadence of his memory guide you towards a tranquil rest. Let the steady rhythm of his legacy be a gentle companion as you drift into a peaceful slumber. The story is complete, the journey concluded. All that remains is the quiet, comforting echo of a life well remembered. Rest now with the enduring presence of Johnny Cash.